This has been Brode, and you're watching Born to be Wild.
Greeting, traveler.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Born to be Wild, a Wild exclusive Hearthstone podcast where we have fun hanging out with friends, talking about the Wild format of Hearthstone and showcasing members of the Wild community. I'm your host, Nate Wolf. We have a little bit of a different lineup tonight. Hydralisk is on vacation. Mike Lowe is having some technical difficulties, and so I've got two of my other favorite people here joining me today. So Electric Sheep City, welcome to the show. It's good to have you back. I like your shirt. I like your shirt, by the way. Very nice.
Oh yeah, great to be here.
Super cool. And of course, we were talking some Shaman tonight, so I reached out to resident Shaman expert Blutrane to fill in as well. So welcome back to the show. It's really good to have you. And thank you. Thanks for joining us last minute. I really appreciate that. And then our special guest this evening is Sneaky Pete. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Nate. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those people, I guess, who are not as familiar with you, could you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, as much or as little as you're willing to share, kind of like how long you've been playing Hearthstone, why you like Wild, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I'm not a long-time player. I think Witchwood's when I think I started, because my Blizzard app got frozen with that background forever and only like just updated this last expansion. But kept me reminded of when I started. And I was a guy, I was a casual MTG player back in the day, and a couple of years ago I remember being like, gosh, I miss the card stuff, and stumbled on Hearthstone and jumped into it, and already had the Blizzard app, and so got into it. And I was a real casual like hunter main guy for a long time, and then eventually kind of not free to play, but I'd buy, when they threw an expansion deal at me I couldn't refuse, I'd buy some cards, and just started getting kind of progressively more and more into the game, and then finally understanding it more and looking at the Reddits and starting to view some videos, and at some point I remember Standard getting sort of so, thick's the right word, but just like I've always enjoyed kind of playing decks that I had sort of steered or felt like I'd influenced, so not always strictly net decks maybe, and I just didn't feel like there was a lot of space in Standard for that, and so I ended up playing around in Wild, and I think about the time Shudder rotated, I think that was the deck, I ended up kind of following that into Wild so I could mess around for a while, and finding it wasn't as oppressive as I had thought it would be, and the deck varieties were really interesting, and there were all of these old cards that I hadn't really come across before because I'd always been a Standard player, and so I just kind of got hooked. And I tend to sort of ladder in both, but have just somehow sort of become a Wild mostly player, I guess. So I love it, and just learning and trying to come up with new things, and and I think it's really fun seeing how even the Standard meta, especially the last few sets, have really shifted Wild in some pretty interesting ways. It's been fun to be along the ride for that.
Yeah, definitely. So where did you and I meet? Was it just on Ladder? I think we just queued in?
Ladder. Yeah, I think we queued in together, and I tend to, like, if I have a good game with somebody, or sometimes like I'm playing a similar deck, or I'll often like hit that friend thing to see what happens, and just, hey, good game somebody, and so I think that's how we met.
I think that's right. And I Wild has, at least in my experience, has been a very welcoming community. I mean, I think the other piece of it is I tend to ladder, for me personally, pretty late at night. It's usually my like 8 p.m. to midnight p.m. my time. And I swear, like, you and I were just always on at the same time. And it was, hey, right, how are you? Hey, what's going on? And we just chat because we were always on at the same time.
Yeah, and then you mentioned you did a podcast. I was like, what? There's podcasts on like Hearthstone? How did I not know this? And then yeah, exactly. And then I've learned even more recently, so it's been great.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm very excited to have you tonight. So if you're new to Hearthstone podcast, there are lots and lots and lots. There are not very many wild exclusive ones. In fact, I think that it is pretty much us and the Hearthstoners, and I think that's about it. And so I don't know. Everybody likes standard, and I think standard is cool. Standard is fine. That is kind of where I go when I'm done laddering for wild, in wild for the month. But we'll see. We definitely have some fun things to talk about tonight. Some folks have been asking us to chat about the wild meta a little bit, and I think that's one of the segments we've been talking about adding to the show. So it'll be some interesting discussion, particularly about Dark Glare Warlock tonight. So everybody's what do you call least favorite to play against deck on the ladder at the moment. So
Good. Gonna make for some good conversation. That's for sure.
Except for Ghoul Daniel. Sorry, Ghoul Daniel. You're alone on this.
Hey, so Sneaky Pete, we ask folks typically when they come on, how did you come up with your username? Like, is there a funny story behind it, or is there?
Yeah, it's funny. I really wish there was. I want to say I got. I played a lot of StarCraft in college, and I think it's not a great story. I think that was like a nickname I had in college, and so when I set up a Blizzard account, I set it up under that, and then I've just played, and it's not a name. Like, I always feel like every time I lose, I feel a little bad because I'm like, oh, they queued into me and expected some tricks, and I didn't pull them out this time. So, but yeah, so that's what I had forever, and I just never felt like changing it, and don't seem to offend anybody. So.
Oh, it's all good. Do you play anything, any other games or any other systems or anything besides Hearthstone?
So some console stuff, and I used to play a lot of console stuff. And I think one thing, maybe just, not being super young anymore, I found that like if I was doing Call of Duty or, whatever, like I had trouble sleeping sometimes. Like it was really causing me, some of like the real like twitchy games were causing some issues. So I moved to strategy, and then man, like Hearthstone's been awesome. Like it's just something for me, like a lot of times at the end of the night that I like to really unwind with. So I will play other stuff, love playing stuff with the kids sometimes, but I think like hour-wise, this has been my game for a while.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's, part of the beauty of it is you can play for, 15, 20 minutes. You can play for 3 hours or 10 hours or whatever. And I feel you there. I've been playing The Last of Us 2 lately, and I love the game. The storytelling is phenomenal, but the game is so intense that like I can't play it for hours at a time. Like I can play it for maybe an hour or so, and it's like, okay, all right, I need to chill for a little while. God, I feel it's like embarrassing to admit that, but it's intense. I don't know, and maybe I'm just getting old.
Well, and in general, there's something kind of relaxing about, almost solitaire-like of Hearthstone, where, you can drag the cards onto it, whereas something where you're shooting them up is gets the adrenaline pumping a little bit more.
Right.
Unless, of course, you're playing an APM deck like Dark Cleric Warlock.
Oh, God, that's funny. Yeah, no, that's true. I have to remind myself often that, like, I guess my tendency is to play turns very quickly. And like, you really don't have to do that. You've got a minute and a half. You can take your time and think through things like, I don't know, or typically, and I do not recommend doing this, but what I like to do is I've got 2 monitors. And so typically I've got HBO or Netflix or something like some TV playing on one monitor and then Hearthstone on the other one. Mm-hmm. And for my, my like ADD, ADH brain, like loves that, to have the like split attention. I don't recommend it. It's probably...
So you're a roper.
No.
Quite the opposite, actually.
I have found but I have learned I like to do the same thing. I don't do that when I'm laddering. I've like learned my lesson. Unless it's a meta, like I know back and forth. Like I can't do that anymore and not find myself making little mistakes.
See, if I've got Twitch on one side where I'm like engaging on chat, then I'm a roper because like I'm more engaged with what's going on the other monitor. Whereas if I'm watching Netflix or whatever, like, yeah, I kind of look over, but then whenever it's my turn, it's like real quick, easy, boom, 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 switch back over, let them do their thing, right?
Right.
But yeah, Twitch is much more engaging, and then I end up roping a bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure. I keep thinking about doing it. I don't know. Sheep, how long have you been streaming for?
About a year, off and on. The past week or two have kind of been off because my AC has been down until yesterday. So that's been yeah, don't try and stream with AC off. It just goes bad for everyone. But yeah, about a year.
Okay. And I know Blutrane, you've been doing it kind of sporadically, a lot less in the past, but recently you really kicked it up. So, what do you think?
Every now and then.
I like doing it when I feel like it. I worry for myself that if I turned it into a regular thing, like it would take some of the fun out of it. So I don't know, for me, it's like, okay, you know, I do it here and there whenever I feel like it. And it's very seldom, but I like doing the show every Friday. Yeah. So
it's tough. It's a labor of love. It's hard work. The lights, just having the light on in your face so that you get a decent profile shot, it's brutal.
Yep.
And I salute all you guys that do it regularly or semi-regularly. It's certainly a much tougher gig than I think you might realize at first pass. Especially if you're 100%. Interacting with chat and still performing decently in game, and yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah, well, and that's why I think that Sheep and I have been talking offline like this week about the idea of switching. Like I use a blue screen or a green screen rather, and I've got two giant bright lights up on either side of me, and they get hot and they're bright like right in my face. And then when I watch someone like Mike with his like LED cool background, or Burnt or someone like that that's just got lights in the background kind of going, I like that. That's cool. And you've got like all your Star Wars and Harry Potter, Legos, Spider-Man. I see a Boba Fett Slave One, an X-Wing, a Death Star. I think I see Ric Flair back there.
All the fun things.
So, but that's cool, right? And it's interesting. We were talking about the psychology of it a little bit, right? Where it's like, hey, you are inviting people into your house, right? Into your space. And I think that's pretty cool. Where I am like, you know, a floating head here, and I'm in Skullomance Academy, but it's I'm thinking about trying something like that. We'll see. Anyways, totally off topic, but anyhow, before we get too much further into the show, I wanted to give a big shout out to our patrons, especially Shokunin, who is the executive producer of our show. Thank you so much just for the encouragement that you provide and the financial backing. He is sponsoring one of our giveaways today and helps keep the lights on, and we really appreciate that. And to all of our other patrons, thank you so much for contributing. Very kind of you. That being said, how was your guys' week? Whether it's kind of Hearthstone or personal life, how are you guys doing? Let me start out with Sneaky Pete. How are you hanging in there this week?
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, it's 2020. I think you get these real rough days a week.
Yes,
that sort of becomes the mantras. It's like, you know what, we're just. I think what I try to say, you know, you're just surviving until the next month, next year, and then, you know, you're hoping life picks back up. So
I feel you there.
There's so much going on.
Yeah. Blutrane, how are you doing? How was your week this week?
It's all right. Hectic. Work is crazy. We just acquired another organization, so we're going through the whole merger and acquisition thing. Don't try that at home. Hearthstone-wise, you know, pretty good. I'm going to have a lot to say on the meta, but all things aside, been maintaining leaderboard on NA and EU. The Wild Ladder, I think I just lost leaderboard today through decay on NA. but definitely a successful month, and not just doing try-hard stuff. EU is mostly with Odd Shaman, which is a deck that is quite good. And yeah, just gonna try to hold those leaderboard finishes for 3 days and see what we can do there.
You get that 11 star for sure.
Yeah, but yes. Funny you say that. So when I climbed on EU this month, which was middle month, I had the 11 star bonus, and the queue times were brutal. Like I spent more time in queue than I did in game. Because all the 11 star people, I guess, hit Legend day 1 or 2 or something. I don't know how it works, but people who ladder late in the month tend to have longer queue times now with the 11 star modifier.
Interesting. I don't know. I haven't been very motivated to like try. I don't know. I hit Legend super early again, and then I kind of goof off the rest of the month, which is fine, but it I don't know. I haven't wanted to like grind super hard in that top 200. I mean, I'm super impressed with what you've been doing. Don't get me wrong. I used to have a lot of anxiety about like ladder anxiety, and now I don't. I mean, what has it been, 5 months, 6 months in a row now, hitting Legend real early every month, and okay, cool. I guess I'm good at the game now. Like and I don't worry as much, and it's a lot less. I don't know what the right word is. Stressful, I guess. That it definitely feels obtainable because hey, I just need 15 wins instead of 25, and I don't know. I guess I'm more confident in my ability. But when you start getting, especially where I was at in Legend, like I'd win a game and I'd gain 20 points, and I'd lose a game and lose like 60, and it's like, good Lord, what's the incentive to play? You know, and I want to. At that point, like I achieved what I was aiming to achieve, and now if I want to have fun, like playing fun decks, I'm just gonna dumpster super hard. And so what I've been doing is I'll play Wild until I hit Legend, and then either play Wild casual or switch over to Standard. And so I spent half the month playing big Recruit Warrior in Standard, and I had some absurd like 80% win rate or something. It was super fun. I mean, I at like Diamond 10 maybe right now, but it's fun. I'd never thought that I would find myself saying that. I'm gonna lose my wild card right now, but
I still get ladder anxiety, worse than ever. I don't know what to do about that. I've been spending quite a bit of time the last few days just playing against friends, basically taking turns being the Dark Glare Warlock, just trying to find an answer. Yeah, and I'll save that for the meta segment, but interesting data, interesting takeaways that I think that shatter a lot of assumptions that that people had. But you know what? I will say this, even though the reason we're doing it is somewhat irritating, I actually quite enjoy playing friendly games against my friends. I did some series with Shiwa Nessa, Daniel, 3 Yanura. Oh gosh, I'm gonna forget some other folks, but I actually think that's probably more enjoyable than any other Hearthstone experience I've had this month. And so, something to consider if you want to change it up.
Well, and I
play a series against a friend.
I hadn't considered it, and maybe we should do some kind of segment like that. And not saying tonight is the night, but I wonder if we do one of those like know your enemy type segments where, how do you beat Dark Glare Warlock? How do you beat Odd Warrior? How do you beat Reno Priest? That would be
Two
really...
of those have answers.
I figured out the solution to beating Dark Glare Warlock. It involved purchasing Divinity 2 for the Switch and not queuing ladder. And I am pleased to report it is working out. All right.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm kind of in the same boat where I buy, I don't know, some stuff on Steam for sure, but I'm a big fan of GOG. and they just had a giant sale. They have giant sales like every other day, but they had a giant sale on all the Darksiders games. And so I got all 4 games for like $20 or something. And I've been playing through the first one. I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through, maybe. And like, it is just mindless, fun action, butts and mashing. And it is not Hearthstone. And I've been having a really good time playing it. But I mean, I'm still playing Hearthstone every day, but it's definitely good to, at least good for me mentally, to like get away every once in a while. So I don't know. Anyways, I find myself frequently going down rabbit holes, so I apologize. Sheep, how was your week? You are kind of near this hurricane that's happening. I'm glad that it missed you.
Yeah, so it was about less than 100 miles from here, like the outer edges of it. So thankfully, didn't hit me. I hope that everyone who was affected by the hurricane is safe and recovering, both mentally and physically. My week has been very hot. The AC in the second floor, which is where I am now, with the kind of studio type stuff, has been out. And I live in Texas, so it has been hot up here, pretty much at like noon or 1, because right now I'm working remotely. I have to head downstairs and work on a laptop because it's literally over 90 degrees Fahrenheit inside, so no breeze, nothing. So it's been hot, and because of that, I've been playing a lot less Hearthstone, actually because of something we'll talk about in the news. The lack of updates to Arcane Tracker have made it to where it's less fun to engage in ladder in particular. So I've been playing a little bit more Battlegrounds, but still haven't been playing a ton of Battlegrounds either because, I mean, not really my thing quite as much. It's fun. I enjoy it, but anytime I sit down with Battlegrounds, it's like, oh, this is going to be like a 20-30 minute ordeal versus a ladder game, which if I'm playing a control deck, I know what I'm getting into, but I can make that decision, right? So it's been pretty hot up here, but pretty good. So since there's been less mobile Hearthstone, I've been doing a lot of things like in the yard and just kind of like around the house, getting things up and ready. And luckily, I've been avoiding a bit of what Blutrane and I will probably talk about here shortly in the meta segment.
All right, good times. For me also, it's been a good week, kind of uneventful. I have to show you. I got my other shirt, so I have this beautiful. Let me move this thing here, but.
I like that. That's nice. I like that one a lot.
That is really slick.
I was excited to see how these all would turn out. So big shout out to Wildcard, who put together the store for us, and his wife has a shop called Spangle Custom Apparel that we do all of our merch through, and so we've been experimenting with different colors and logos and everything, and so it was. I don't know. I was excited to see because you can pair all the different colors with all the, you can have the logo either in full color or in black or in white, and then any different color shirt to go with it. And they're really, I don't know. It's soft, very comfortable. So, sorry to be like pushing the merch, but like I'm just so excited about it. And
it looks sick too. Not gonna lie, I'm a big black T-shirt fan, and I do think that my next one, instead of being like the full color, it's going to be that white on the black T-shirt. Like, that's going to look sick.
That's going to look sick. Yeah, I prefer mostly black everything. But I wanted to get the color ones just to see. And I have been so pleasantly surprised with how everything has turned out. Like, they just look cool. So that has been good for me. I had some minor medical, like, outpatient surgery where I had some... they call it a lipoma. It's basically like a fatty like little lump under the skin. I had a couple of those removed on my upper back and on my abdomen area, and so I've got stitches right now, and they're itchy and they're sore. But I'm doing okay. So if you see me squirming, it's because like my back is rubbing against the chair and it hurts. But I'm doing fine.
I'm glad you're okay, and I'm glad that it seems like it was a relatively painless, surgery.
Oh yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it's all outpatient. All in all, it took like half an hour, And typically they're it's not a big issue. But anyways, yeah, no, everything is good. Aside from that, it's been a good week. I don't know, just everything with the show has been exciting. We've got some fun things in store that we're trying to kind of, I guess, get ready for the future. So, Gobbledygook says, "Come on, you got a vasectomy." It was, I didn't want to go out and say it on the show, but I guess since you brought it up, I had a penile reduction. It was just too big. I was having a hard time walking, and it's more manageable now. No, I'm just joking.
That's why you're squirming.
So no, I've got some stitches. I had these things, and one of them was rubbing against my ribs and it was hurting, and the other one was rubbing against, when I sit in my office chair, it was like rubbing against the chair back at just the right angle that was driving me crazy. And so it got them taken out, and yeah, it's fine. I did not anticipate the recovery time being longer. I forgot that stitches hurt, and when they cut open your body, that doesn't feel very good when it heals.
It never kind of heals perfectly. There's always going to be scar tissue. Like when I stream for several hours, towards the end, I'll be moving around a lot, readjusting, and people sometimes ask, "Why do you move around so much? Are you okay?" And it's like, I've had quite a few surgeries on my stomach over the years, and I'm right now trying to sit extra still for the sake of the show. But if there were small incisions, it's probably fine. But scar tissue kind of, makes it tough to kind of sit still and at ease. You're constantly having to deal with the scars. So hopefully they were small and laparoscopic, and
yeah, I mean,
you'll be back to normal in no time.
It should be. I think by early next week I should be back to mostly normal. Each incision was about maybe an inch.
I just wiggle around because of my ADHD.
Same, but it's all. Well,
good. I'm amongst. Then I can feel like I'm in a safe space to move around and try to stay comfortable then.
Well, definitely. And I guess, I think the last or the vast bulk of folks listening or watching this, I think more people listen on the audio podcast, so maybe nobody's watching at all. But anyways, hey, so one of the things that we've been doing on the show is to shout out new wild legends. It's always very exciting to have people join those ranks, and so I've got 4 of them tonight. That's very exciting. So the first one up is JVJD. Achieved first legend. This is earlier this week with Kingsbane Rogue, 23-13 from Diamond 4 to Legend with Corbett's Kingsbane Rogue. So that's super cool. Very excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hang out with JD a lot in streams. I never realized this was his first legend, so I was super excited when he was broadcasting it. I think we were all on Concerned Moms chat.
Oh, that's really cool. I had no idea.
Congrats. Yeah. I'm stoked for him. And I'm a big Kingsbane supporter, so it was nice that it was accomplished with an honorable deck.
I like
or
it.
what passes for honorable today in the wild metagame.
Nice. Okay, next up is Mario Albassar. After 2.5 years of playing, finally stopped playing meme decks for a while and made it to Legend with Raza Priest. So that's super cool. Is not an easy deck to pilot. I think it is one of the more skill-intensive decks. A lot of decisions to make, and so that's exciting. Very cool.
Congrats.
Congrats. The next one up, near and dear to my heart, Dizzy Dwarf, first time legend, finally did it. Thank you to all the supporters. Although he played Dark Glare Warlock, so
It's fine for the first time. We can overlook it.
I'm so excited for him though, because he and I did a few kind of co-op / coaching sessions a while back. Nice. And for the last probably 3 months in a row, like he keeps hitting D1 or like getting up to the final boss, and like missing it at the last minute. And so I'm so happy for him to finally, push that last little bit, and that's exciting. So very happy for him.
Such a weight lifted off your shoulders. The first time you hit it, it's like there's no pressure to do it again.
Right? There really isn't. I mean,
doing it, then there's a pressure to continue doing it.
I know.
Yeah, that's. I think Nate and I are in that camp now. Like,
Same.
they changed the ladder, and all of a sudden expectations have shifted, and we're applying these standards to ourselves that we never did. And I can't speak for you, Nate, but it's driving me absolutely batty.
Yeah, I can speak to that as well. If I don't hit Legend in both Standard and Wild, then I kind of feel like, oh no, what have I done? Where's the month gone?
Right. I mean, and I think for me personally, it's like, hey, did I just lose my street cred? Like, and I mean, of course not, right? But at the same time, I feel sort of obligated. Like, hey, I'm running this Wild show. I probably should be hitting Wild Legend. And I don't think that that's always realistic, although I'm very happy with the changes to ladder where I think it's achievable now. So anyways, one more we've got. So the final one up is from our Born to Be Wild Discord. It's Catharsis, first time Wild Legend, first time double legend in the same month. And that's super cool as well. So
congratulations, Catharsis, and I look forward to eventually playing you in THL.
Double Legend Standard Wild or Wild on two different servers? I imagine Standard Wild, same server?
I believe it's Standard and Wild Legend in the same. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, since they said first time Wild Legend, that's my assumption as well.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
And then
probably should read the tweet.
Then for those of you watching or listening, Sneaky Pete is with us. He had to take a real quick phone call, and he'll be right back. But yes. Anyways, we have some news that we always try to cover whatever sort of Hearthstone related news, particularly if it is Wild related. If it is not Wild related, we'll still cover it, but we kind of blaze through it a little bit faster. But I will get started. So first up, there is a new animated short. It is a series of animated Warcraft shorts that just premiered yesterday at Gamescom 2020. The animated series precedes the next World of Warcraft expansion called Shadowlands, which launches on October 27th. So this is super cool. I'm excited to watch, and one thing that I didn't realize until I had looked into it a little bit is that they've done these animated shorts in the past for other WoW expansions, and I just had no clue. But as we've starting to hang out with Goliath more and more and learn more and more about the lore, like I just eat this stuff up. So I can't wait to. I have not had a chance to watch this yet. But I'm really excited. God, if they made like a full-on cartoon, I would be in geek heaven. So I don't know. Have you guys had a chance to watch this at all?
I have not seen it yet, but I would definitely watch a cartoon or anime or whatever WoW or Warcraft lore in a heartbeat. So I'm definitely going to check this out because the more that I know about the characters that I already know about through Hearthstone, the better. How about you, Blutrane?
I've not watched it yet. I will. I like all of the little shorts they put out. I wasn't a super big fan of the last WoW expansion, but the little short they put out with Sylvanas and, well, spoiler alert, burning the tree was pretty sick. So I imagine this one's going to be equally cool. They always make good quality stuff.
I heard that this one had to do with like the afterlife. At least this first episode is with Uther and Arthas, the Prince Arthas who turns into the Lich King. So I don't know. It should be really cool. Pete, you said you're back?
Yep, I am back.
Very cool. Have you had a chance to watch these at all?
No, I haven't actually watched. If they don't show up in the Blizzard feed, I don't always see them right away.
Yeah, I don't know. This one like snuck into my Twitter feed, and I happened to see it and was like, "Wait a minute!" I got all excited at first because when I saw this, it calls it a quote unquote original animated series, and of course my mind jumps to like Batman the animated series or one of these, and I thought it was like a full on, like, oh, we have ourselves a new anime here or a new cartoon here, and I was so excited, and then I started digging into it and found, oh, it's just a series of animated shorts to get ready for this new Warcraft expansion. I thought it was like a TV show.
More importantly, I wonder if the pre-order is going to have a card back like Battle for Azeroth did.
Yeah, I don't know. I still haven't bought it yet. I can't bring myself to spend $40 on a card back for a game that I don't play, but I really like, I don't know. I still want it.
It's pretty sick.
I would like to take a moment to appreciate that you said snuck into your Twitter timeline when you were speaking with Sneaky Pete.
We will insert as many puns as possible. So we'll see. I always love when there's some kind of in-game something, especially for Hearthstone. So
yeah.
I liked when they were doing the card backs for the BlizzCon virtual tickets and stuff, and then they started doing the exclusive gold card.
They always get me with that.
I know, me too.
Well, your wish is their command. I think you're gonna get a lot more of that sort of thing with the battle pass that's coming out soon.
It sounds like it.
Too. Yeah. And honestly, the paid version, I know that we don't have Battle Pass on our news agenda, but in general, like having the cosmetic and gold versions of like non-gold things that the non-paid version of the Battle Pass gets makes a lot of sense and like just seems like a really good fit. I definitely think that some tweaking needs to be done to make sure that people are getting as much gold and or as many packs out of the battle pass as possible, and I hope and have faith that they're tweaking those appropriately. But in general, man, if we can get as many cosmetics like for the $10-$20 for a season, I mean, I'll pay it. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah,
I think someone tweeted, maybe it was Ixar, that the non-paid version will provide comparable rewards. I mean, the devil's in the details, and we'll see. But I mean, if they can maintain parity, it's not like they'd have to do a whole lot. I mean, let's be honest. When's the last time, other than maybe expansion release day, that you saw the message that you've exceeded your 100 gold limit?
About 3 or 4 times a month.
That's more than most.
That's a lot more than me. Yeah.
Over the weekends, I play a lot.
Yeah, I was going to add it and I forgot, but let me do it real quick because I try hard to stay off of Reddit because I end up just getting like frustrated.
Reddit is a time warp for sure. You'll look up and it will have been 3 or 4 hours.
But here is a quote here from Ixar on Reddit about this very topic, about the battle pass. I know people have been worried about, am I going to lose value? I just play kind of casually. I'm usually able to save up between 5,000 and 10,000 gold between expansions. And so this is his quote. Like someone had posted on Reddit kind of complaining about all this. And so I'm just going to read this verbatim. Ixar says, assuming you play the same amount and have the same quest completion rate, you shouldn't earn less gold or non-gold in the new system. In nearly all circumstances, you should be earning slightly more gold and more non-gold packs, etc. Our plan is to remove rewards from quests though the experience you earn per quest on the average will net you as much or more reward as quests give you now. Something that has come up a lot is the idea that you will no longer be able to obtain the packs you want on day one, and instead will get a quote-unquote drip feed of packs over the expansion. While you will receive rewards as the expansion goes on, the gold you earn per expansion should remain relatively flat from what you earn now. This should make your ability to buy packs on day one similar to what you get now, but with more non-gold rewards added on top. Our intent with the system is for it to be upside for all players. We've done many checks on different player segments to try and make sure that is the case no matter how you play. Despite all of this, we're making XP per level and XP bonuses as tuning knobs. In case our predictions were incorrect, we can push legendary quests or give out additional rewards during events as well. And then he puts source, countless hours spent staring at an Excel spreadsheet trying to get this right. And so, long story short, at least what he's saying is you will at least earn what you get right now, if not more. And so I think that's good. I mean, I know everybody is skeptical, and it is what it is. And I think that we just need to trust the process and let it be. I mean, nothing that we do or say is going to change it anyhow. So let's, I guess, see what happens.
I completely agree.
Oh.
I think in particular, we've seen a lot of really good things that they've been doing to try and make it cheaper for us, like the no duplicate protection or no duplicate protection across all rarities is amazing. I will say that the one thing that kind of makes me a little hesitant to be straight up cheering is kind of that in nearly all circumstances, because the amount of experience for each level goes up once you hit certain milestones. So people who play the game more than the average sheep, like me, will probably see their gold kind of maybe plateau and or dip a little bit. But also, if we're getting a ton of cosmetics on top of that, I'm also really happy about that. So I'm still kind of cheering, however much I understand why some people are a little bit less enthusiastic, but that's just me.
What I worry about, if you guys don't mind adding, is just, I think for
Absolutely.
most of us that are serious players, this is already a $300 a year game. If you buy sort of one set per expansion, one of the things, and maybe they trick you midway through the month by offering some unbelievable deal, even if you're not putting other gold in, it's already a $300 a year game every year. And that's sort of if you had ever asked me if I ever thought I'd enter a stage in my life where I was paying that per game, I'd say, no, you're crazy. That's for the little kids who are whales buying, cosmetic whatever. But we live in a loot box game, right? It's amazing, but it's a loot box game. And so, does this new system make it a $450 a year game, or is it just moving the needle a little bit because they can get that from us? And that's what I worry about a little bit. Is am I going to feel like I'm not competitive? I'm not buying this. And am I now just throwing even more money into something that I already feel like a whale? Even though I think we all know people that spend a lot more, right? But I'm already feeling like that. So
Yeah, you're definitely with the whale club at the moment.
Yep.
And I think we collectively have spent so much money on this game. If the battle pass for me is an extra $20 or an extra $30, and I got the survey initially, and it sounded like it was going to be quarterly, but we'll see. If it's 20 or $30 every 4 months, okay, I can eat that. If it's an extra $20 a month, I probably spend way more than $300 a year. I hate to say it, but it's for me, it's probably $300 an expansion. But geez. So now that I say that out loud, it makes me feel a little bad.
So the way that I read it, it kind of seemed like it was one battle pass per expansion cycle, so 3 times a year.
Okay,
right?
that's not too bad.
So $20 for the paid aspect of it, 3 times a year. I mean, to me personally, that's worth it. But I don't know. I don't think that I pay $300 per expansion, but I definitely pay more than 200. So I'm definitely with you in that that's very expensive, but also if I'm engaging with it as much as I do, and I do, then I'm getting my money's worth because I'm engaging with it in a manner that I feel like it's worth it. And if I get a whole bunch of cool cosmetics to go with it, I personally am happy.
Yeah.
So, if any of you've played paper card games like Magic, there are people who spend more money on one expansion than
We
you'll
spend all
have ever
year.
spent or ever.
Yeah.
Now, I
Some on
understand
one
that
deck.
this is, yeah, it's not the same thing, and there's arguments for and against. Look, from my perspective, it's if they manage to keep the unpaid version or the budget conscious version comparable or better,
Mhm.
then I think I can live with it. Because my concern is that I'll probably, waste my money on this, but I don't want this to become something that creates more of a divide between the free to play, excuse me, and those who do invest. I want to see more people playing.
Mhm.
Those 5-minute queues, never fun. The more accessible, when they make things more accessible, I think the better off we are, even if it's not perfect. Like the changes they made to ladder. When they make the game less accessible, then it drives players out. And this game will live or die based on a vibrant and if not growing, then at least stable community.
Completely agreed. And to kind of yes and with what you're saying, the paid version, at the very least, in the mock-ups that we saw on out of .cards, the only things that were different in the paid version were gold versions of non-gold things that you couldn't disenchant that you would get for the main one, cosmetics. But here's the kicker that I think, however much I'm going to get it, so like it doesn't really affect me, but I do wish that they would change for the exact reason that you were saying to make it more accessible, experience boosts. I do wish and hope that they would keep those experience boosts kind of out of it and kind of have everyone at a level playing field. Because let's be real, you and I, we're probably going to get to the top of, whatever ladder type system they include on there anyway. We play a lot, right? Whether there's an experience boost or not. So I wish that they would make that a little bit more equitable so that the only kind of changes that you get for a paid version are the cosmetics. Because I personally am going to pay for the cosmetics, period. I just wish that the experience boost addition to that kind of feels a little bit more pay to win.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Perception's everything. Even if it's not pay to win, if it feels like it's pay to win or creates a dialogue in that vein, you've already lost the mind share of a segment of the player base.
Yeah. All right. Well, we could talk Battle Pass all night, so I'm just gonna move us. I'm just gonna move us along a little bit.
Cool.
So next up is let's see. Hearthstone released an article. And again, for any of you who are watching or listening, I'll have the links to all of these different things in the show notes. So when this comes out, you're free to read these for yourself and go into more depth than we're going into on the show. Hearthstone released a news article yesterday called Tales and Tidbits from the Hearthstone team on launching Scholomance Academy while working remotely. So while we are living in the age of COVID-19, they are doing the same thing. And so essentially, it's an article that says, hey, here are kind of the difficulties that we went through in launching this expansion while working from home. The TLDR is that it required a lot of communication and a lot of coordination, and it was not easy, but they did it. So bravo to them. I mean, I think that this is kind of one of the more dynamic sets that they've had come out in a long time in terms of new play styles, new mechanics. There was the theme to this, or the I don't know, I guess thematically is very fun for a lot of people, myself included. And so the fact that they were able to do this while working from home is pretty awesome.
I love this stuff. The inside baseball stuff. It's interesting to learn more about the game. It's interesting to see how people function in this time in other organizations. There are two things that I don't want to get too off topic here, but there are two things that I take away from this. My experience in working remotely 100% of the time, when that wasn't the case, and just a general thought. So one, everyone that's saying that the office is dead are completely wrong. In fact, I predict that once we find a vaccine or a treatment or something that returns us to normalcy, you're going to see the pendulum swing completely in the opposite direction, where people are going to go too far in bringing everyone back into an office-like environment. Second thing, sorry?
Experiences.
Yeah, the second thing is that engagement, communication, facilitation. If you're ever on the job and someone says, "Oh, you just have to communicate to the stakeholder group," it's easy. Communication and engagement is never easy. It is never cheap. It is always difficult, and you have to do it in multiple ways. And the fact that they were able to turn out what I think is one of the better sets in this climate is really a testament to, I'm sure they had their challenges, but the maturity of their engagement, communication, and process. I mean, it's kind of insane that they were able to pull it off.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting. I mean, I work for a government agency, and what we're seeing, some groups easier than others, but a lot of folks are able to work from home rather successfully. And I'm in a leadership position, and one of the things that we keep talking about is, hey, once this is all quote unquote over, like there is a new normal. Like I don't think that a lot of folks are going to be coming back to the office. Like we started asking, well,
just watch. I bet it's gonna. I mean, this is just my hot take. Everyone that's saying this is the new normal, you're going to see the pendulum swing the other way completely.
We'll see. It'll be interesting. I don't know. Our tech folks especially have all been working, our ISD department has all been working remotely, and their leadership was saying like, hey, once things slowly start to return to normal, we're thinking of still having our folks all work remotely or have one person in the office per day and rotated each week. And we'll see. I mean, I think that that's smart. I was like historically,
and then another team will not have that luxury. They'll say, "Hey, how come the IT team gets to work from home and we don't?" And then the politics of humanity will take hold. Anyways, I'm a bit of a pessimist here. I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I think that people should have the flexibility in how they work and whatnot. But I also know that as human beings, we're a very special breed, aren't we? And I think that you're going to see a reversal on that. Is that what they call pulling a Yahoo? Like when that CEO basically canceled all work from home? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I feel you because my team are folks that have to primarily work in person, and we have our own unique set of challenges. And I don't really want to talk about work anymore.
All right, sorry, but I really like this stuff, and I applaud them for being transparent about this. It's really cool.
I agree.
I also really liked how they had like a different team members speaking to a whole bunch of the different aspects. So it wasn't just like, here's what we did, like a top-down approach of like kind of corporate speak, but it was a whole lot of different team members. And I thought that from like a humanist point of view was like really cool and engaging too.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me move on then. The next little piece of news was, let's see here. Wrong one. Here we go. Okay, so there was a co-op between Hearthstone and a Brazilian comic called Monica Young Gang, where they teamed up, and there was an article and they did a YouTube video, and it was all in Portuguese. And so I'm sitting here freaking out, like, what is going on? What's happening? There's this custom artwork. They're doing a co-op. Like, what is this? And I used Google Translate for all it's worth. But essentially what I can make of this is that they did basically it's just a promotional thing. These are not cards that are going to appear in the actual game, but they took these comic book characters and turned them into Hearthstone cards. Hearthstone characters, Hearthstone cards. The artwork is really cute, though. It's really small, hard to see on the screen, but they took them and turned them all into like hero cards. The art for me, and as like a filthy Westerner, like looks very reminiscent of like Archie to me. But I like the idea where they turned all of these comic characters into like, hey, there is the main character Monica as a as a rogue or as a demon hunter or whatever that's supposed to be.
Rogue.
Rogue, probably. And so they did it for 5 or 6, different characters. And that was cool. And they released a short video and all of the high-res art. And I thought that was kind of fun. So it doesn't look like anything that we'll actually see in game, but was cute.
I do hope that this brings some kind of possibilities for alternate card art, particularly with like the battle pass system that we were talking about, right? If there's some that for example, in this one, have a little bit more of like a almost Harry Potter looking kind of like style of art, alternate Swamp Queen Hagatha, I don't know, or something like that, card art that's kind of reminiscent of those. That would be pretty cool. And the fact that they're engaging with different creators in these ways makes me a little bit more hopeful that we'll get some kind of interesting collaborations like that going forward.
That would be fun. I mean, they did say, I don't know if any of you guys got it. I got the survey that everyone was talking about. And I took the survey, and the bulk of the survey was about cosmetics. And they had that spreadsheet that everyone's been talking about. That was part of it. But a lot of it was geared towards cosmetic things, alternate card art for things, alternate card art for the coin, alternate card art for heroes that could upgrade throughout the month. So like there would maybe be 3 different forms of Thrall or 3 different forms of Jaina, and you start out with this one and you upgrade it to the middle one, and then you can upgrade it to the final one. Like, that's kind of cool. I don't know what that really means. It's hard for me to picture. All I want is, like, if I buy something, I want to keep it. Like,
yeah,
I don't want it to like go away at the end of the battle pass season or whatever. Like, let me have it. So I don't know.
That gives me more choices is a good thing, in my opinion.
You know how they did the random card back? Like, if they could do a random hero art, that would be super cool. Because I don't know. Just an idea. Anyways, let's keep moving on so we can actually get to our deck this week. But so the next up, I just want to touch on briefly, but I was excited to see it. Imic is a friend of ours, and he wrote an article. I say write very loosely because most of it was artwork, but he put together this article for Hearthstone, and it's called Interesting Details, Stories, and Facts from the Scholomance Academy Card Arts. And this was kind of cool. And basically, we had all been chatting about this stuff over the past couple weeks, but we would see cards and then characters from cards inside other cards. I don't have good examples with me at the moment, unfortunately, but you would see like
Kel'Thuzad inside of the Sphere of Sapiens, that kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. And I think Mindrender Illucia is in one of the cards where she's with a Murloc, and who is it? There's at least a couple others, and so this article here basically gets a bunch of those cards that shows cards within cards or the little storyline behind cards. You get like the what is it? The broomstick that gives everything rush, right? Is also pictured in the Flying Murloc card. And then once the Flying Murloc like dies, then you get his ghost, and it's all the same broomstick. Like I think it's just cute stuff, but it's really interesting to see how they work that stuff in behind the scenes.
Yeah,
so
it's a really fun article.
You've crossed the line, sir.
In a beautiful way. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That's so good. That's so good. I don't care what anybody says. I like it. Now here is okay. There's an announcer about the Arcane Tracker. Now this has never really affected me. I have iPhone and an iPad, but this is one of the reasons why whenever I ladder, I only play on the PC because I like the deck tracker. When I play on the iPhone or the iPad, like I'm playing Battlegrounds or I'm playing casual or something because there's no deck tracker support. And I think that you folks who use Androids have been able to use a deck tracker on those devices for a long, long time. And unfortunately, it sounds like it's going away. In fact, it's going away in like 3 days. So that's sad news.
Yeah,
I have to think someone will pick it up.
Maybe.
So some of the ways that Android is changing, and they kind of explain it a little bit in the announcement, is that a lot of the back end is kind of going the way that iPhone is in the like different app permissions and whatnot. So they won't be able to read the Hearthstone like data in the same way that they have been. So they won't be able to upload the replays. They won't be able to kind of see what's going on as well. So kind of the same scenario that iPhone and Apple products have been in, Android products are unfortunately going to be in as well. And this honestly is why whenever my AC was out, I haven't been able to play or been as comfortable or enthusiastic about playing Hearthstone on mobile, whereas I used to be very enthusiastic about playing on mobile because I have an Android device and I, would like, oh, that was a really cool game. Let me send that to my friend. Like let me post that on my THL team Discord. That kind of thing. I haven't been able to do that with the release of the Scholomance Academy cards because they haven't been able to update it since late July. So before Scholomance rolled out. So unfortunately, it's something that there's been moderate support until then, but whenever Android gets updated to 11, it'll all go by the wayside, unfortunately.
Bummer.
Yeah, it's too bad. I'm like Nate. I don't have any particular affinity for Apple stuff. It's just what I'm accustomed to.
Right.
This is the first month I actually laddered mostly on PC with Deck Tracker. I usually just do it on my iPad with like nothing or like a scrap of paper. So I mean, I could see why that using Deck Tracker is desirable, even if you don't have the overlays and all the things. The data that it collects that you can review after. 3E Anura and I have made a lot of changes to his odd shaman deck because the data oftentimes, while it doesn't give you, definitive insights, it sometimes can show you things that you didn't expect and explore lines that you otherwise wouldn't have thought to consider. So it's unfortunate to hear that. Also, it's kind of unfortunate to hear that Android's going the way of Apple. I mean, like, diversity is good. Like, it's good to have different platforms that do different things, not to have everything be this amorphous blob of like conformity. So
I don't recall exactly what permission change thing was going on. Like as a whole, they're not becoming Apple, right? But something in the back end is kind of mirroring that. So yeah, it is unfortunate.
Hey Pete, do you use Deck Tracker when you play?
It's funny. I play on a laptop, a Mac laptop, and I don't. I have never used a deck tracker, which my rankings might represent. But if I'm laddering, I'm playing the same deck again and again and again.
That's true.
It isn't often a question of there are times like you play a Highland deck. I don't care how good you are. If you're not taking notes, like it can be hard to remember sometimes what you play.
Oh, but it's not. It's not just about like what cards are left in your deck. Like with HS Replay, it'll start to tell you what your mulligan win rate is with certain cards, what cards are performing well, what are not performing well. It is actually incredible, and that's what I like. I don't even care about the overlays and that sort of thing. It's that data. It is bonkers, and it's what allows me to say that I've encountered Warlock 65% of the time.
Well,
I'm another extreme. I've never used one. I don't. maybe if I get serious about laddering, higher, like wanting to climb high legend, I think that's one of the things that helps a lot. But
That's
yeah, I'm not
incredible
something I
though,
play with.
considering like you're hitting legend every month with no deck tracker. Like that's some true skill, I have to say.
Well, or it's finding the right deck for the right meta at the right time, which is
That's
often
true.
the conversations you and I are having in a month. Because especially with a new system, I feel like I'm running out of steam come Diamond 5, and there are times where it's up and down, up and down, up and down, which can just be agonizing. But if you can take a deep breath, I think, and look at the meta and look at the decks and look where there's either space for play something that's either countering a top deck or play the top deck if you have to. I think there can be space even without a product like that. Now, I have for sure lost games where I think some of that information would be helpful, but I don't know. It's not something I feel like I missed just having never used it, I guess is all I'll say.
I like that point of view though. Like I hadn't considered it. I enjoy it so much that I hadn't thought about the flip side. I do like the data. I am sort of a numbers person at work, and I enjoy having that kind of overview. And I will say, like, it helped us make some changes. We pulled Healing Rain out of our big Shaman deck because we realized that, like, the percentage of time between you drawing it and playing it and using it had such a small impact on the deck as a whole. Like, all right, well, let's throw something better in. But I don't know. I don't know. They do make a version for Mac if you're interested, though. I don't want to get you hooked on it.
No, but like a version of that's like I'll go to HS Replay and I'll browse the free stats, and especially if I'm having trouble in the meta or understanding what it is, or I'm trying to think through the deck I want to play, I will go look at the top wild decks for instance, Warlock, and look at what the differences are. And then for me especially, I think without it is for my play style maybe, I will understand sometimes that some of the changes I make, which we'll talk about a little bit with the Shudderwock stuff eventually, but like I will actually try to make changes that suit my play style or my mulligan style. Maybe not having those percentages to tell me what's better, but like I still feel like I can get to a comfortable legend spot every month. I'm just never going to be top anything, right?
Sure.
Like I fight hard for that dumpster legend, and I say
So one of the aspects of Deck Tracker and HS Replay in particular that I find really helpful is honestly the game by game replay, right? Because whenever I'm looking at those, I can see what my reads were, whether they were accurate, like whether they had those cards in hand. Obviously, if they never play them, then that information is not divulged. But if they do, then I can be like, okay, here was my read here. Was that right? And that helps me develop as a player on like identifying what hand reading essentially, right? And developing that skill more is something that took me from every once in a while hitting legend to hitting legend consistently, and that was a pretty cool development personally.
All right. It looks like our stream died, but it should be right back up. Anyways, well, let's jump over into a real quick meta discussion. We're an hour in, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I do think it's important to touch. So what have you all been seeing? And let me just preface this with, like, I hit Legends so early this month, it was like right before Skullman's launched. I can't even believe that it's been out for less than a month. Isn't that crazy? It feels like a long time. But then I've kind of been like playing meme decks and stuff on ladder, and so I don't have a good feel for it, but I am constantly on the lookout for decks to post in our Discord. And all I keep seeing over and over and over is Dark Glare Warlock, and people comparing it as like, this is the new Darkest Hour, this is the new Naga Sea Witch, and I thought, oh god, here it comes. Someone mentioned today that it's a problem in standard, so it'll get a nerf, which I thought was pretty funny. But
we can hope.
What are you guys seeing? What are you guys playing? Like, I don't know. I queued up, and all I'm seeing is Reno Priest, so I don't know. But I'm curious, if you guys want to chat about this for a couple minutes.
I've
Yeah, so
honestly
go
seen more.
for it.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit more Kingsbane Rogue than I have Darkglare Warlock, but I think that's because they are countering Darkglare, right? Because they can beat them before Darkglare can do the Darkglare thing. So I've mostly been playing like Even Shaman, just kind of trying to refine that a little bit more, and been pretty successful with it, like against Kingsbane Rogue, because that's most of what I'm seeing. That said, Darkglare is also very prevalent. I have a much smaller sample size, and I look forward to hearing about more of the meta from a larger sample size and a higher legend from Blutrane.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, and Nate made a very edifying remark that it feels like Scholomance has been out forever. So the meta's been developing very quickly. So when Darkglare hit the scene initially, it was like almost like an evolution of Discard Warlock. And so the list was really unrefined and suboptimal. And so people were saying, oh, it's not a problem. Aggro beats it. Kingsbane beats it. But as the deck has refined, the matchup spread has become more oppressive. So things that we thought were favored against it are not. Like, so if you look at the Tempo Storm meta report, it'll say that Kingsbane is favored. And I'm sure at that time that it was published, it was. But now it's not. I did, oh gosh, at least 15 games against Shia, who just completely bodied me when I was playing Kingsbane, which is the deck that I had a lot of success with this month. Odd Shaman, which is a very burn-heavy deck, aggressive, initially favored, now not favored. And really it comes down to two things. The deck executes its game plan consistently between turn 3 and 5. So if you're trying to race them, if you don't win the race by turn 4, you pretty much lose. Broomstick is what really seals the game out, because it basically acts as a full board clear. They'll drop the giants, they can efficiently trade, wipe your board, and then the next turn just go in for the one hit or the one turn KO. And against control decks, what very skilled players tend to do is figure out ways to weave Loatheb into their combo turn to lock you out. And because they're doing this so early, you can't play your Shadow Word Ruin. You can't play your Poison Seeds. So people in their Reno Priest decks are playing Wave of Apathy because it's 1 mana to try and stall them out of turns so that they can blow out the board the next, which is, by the way, why Reno Priest is one of the few decks that has game against Darkglare Warlock. So, the deck has really kind of established itself, and, north of 200, which is what I've been seeing and watching other people playing, it's 60% plus Darkglare Warlock. The only other deck that I've seen others have success with, and I personally have as well, is Token Druid and Odd Warrior. And the thing with those decks is that while they consistently beat Darkglare Warlock, the other decks that are kind of in the meta really consistently beat them. Also, who wants to play Odd Warrior? I mean, I'm just saying.
Button Warrior. Hey, let me play devil's advocate just super quick, and I'm just, this is just a different point of view. I wonder that, like, you're seeing this at 60%, but you're seeing this at 60% at top 200 Legend, where I wonder when the deck, or when the month resets, or I'm curious what folks at like Diamond 10 or Diamond 5 are seeing, where I think especially your folks that are playing, they're really trying hard to refine that deck, number one, and number two, like, their skill cap is so much higher than like your average Joe Hearthstone player, where I wonder if
the deck is not hard to play. I think this is a misnomer that kind of circulated early on, because it kind of has the swing turn where you have to play a lot of cards, and it seems it's really not complicated. It's just something that you have to get accustomed to sequencing. And I think you are going to see a lot of that deck on day one, because it executes its game plan so quickly. It's an ideal deck to climb with. Whereas you said before, Nate, you play Reno Priest, it's a bit of a slog because the games tend to be longer. I think that the refinements are going to start trickling down, and you're going to see more and more of it. And I think that people are going to be crying as much as I am and other players are before long. I mean, it's not to say that something else might not develop that counters it, but considering the amount of mana that it cheats in a given game, it's kind of really hard to see what can cheat more mana. I mean, you had Quest Mage that cheated a lot of mana with Sorceress Apprentice. This cheats even more efficiently with Dark Glare. I mean, every card you're playing gives you 2 mana back. It's like an infinite mana cycle, and you're able to basically vomit out 3-4 giants on turn 4. What really makes it consistent, and I'll try to end the rant being conscious of time, is that, you know, there are those will say, well, you have to draw the cards in order to execute the game plan, and this is true, but the deck draws half of itself or more in the first 3 or 4 turns. It consistently executes that game plan. You've got Kobold Librarian, Sense Demons, what's it called? The deal 1 damage, draw a card, Warlock spell.
The the basic spell.
Kobold Librarian.
There's Kobold Librarian. There's the deal 1 damage if you kill a minion, draw a card. You've got Sense Demons.
Mortal Coil.
Oracoil, thank you. I'm getting old. So it has so much cycle, so much draw that you just you get through your deck. And interestingly, and this is my hot take, and I don't know if this will end up being correct, but I believe the way to beat the deck is to not outrace it, because there are 2 broomsticks in the deck, and broomstick is what really lets you deal with the early aggression, vomit out your giants, win the game. There's only 1 Loatheb, and so you basically are counting on them to like bottom deck Loatheb, and maybe you can like squeeze out the poison seeds or the shatter word ruin, or the cheap AOE to try and survive, and then ultimately run them out of resources and take the win.
Interesting.
To kind of yes and that from a lower legend point of view, right? Like I hit legend the 3rd, 4th of the month, and then switched over to standard, which I hadn't played at all in ages, and only really kind of came back in the past week. Yes, I said that most of what I played against was Kingsbane, but it was probably about 67% Kingsbane, 33% Dark Glare Warlock, right? So essentially what I was seeing was Dark Glare and people trying to counter Dark Glare. And this was at low legend, so I was encountering people at also low legend and high diamond. So to kind of yes and, I'm seeing that same that same thing that Nate, you were talking about. How is that affecting places that aren't top 200 legend?
Mm-hmm.
I can see the effects of that where I am in the meta as well.
Interesting. Okay, good point.
If I could add maybe
Yes,
one
please
point.
do. No, yeah, add,
It
please.
seems like a slightly more refined discard Warlock. Because if you remember, end of last month, heading into this month, you sort of saw the lists polish this discard Warlock, which I think surprised a lot of us. It's like, why is Zoo back? Why is Zoo so effective? Why is Zoo so fast? But the Dark Glare was a problem, but I really think that the other problem in some ways was just, the lesson they've never learned. You had a new giant that was very cheatable, which is the same thing that gave Quest Mage so much power. So now you have a deck. I look at this version, Dark Glare, as really just another version of Quest Mage, where you have a very strong, very consistent turn 4 to turn 6 win condition that can lock other decks out.
That's a hot
it has
take.
drawbacks, right? It's burning through cards and it's burning through life, which, if you look at it, it's also in some ways kind of another variant of what we dealt with Demon Hunter, where the Warglaves gave it the ability. I mean, they were cheating cards, they were cheating life in exchange for tempo, and it was more than most decks could deal with before the nerfs started rolling in. So that's a little bit of what this feels like to me, and I think they pushed a lot of Quest Mage out because in a lot of ways it's a better version of Quest Mage, which I don't want to get into. My blood pressure will skyrocket, and
the thing with Quest Mage, the thing with Quest Mage is that aggro beat it. Pirate Warrior was a thing because it just bodied Quest Mage. Problem with Dark Glare that frankly makes it even worse than Quest Mage, and get your blood pressure medication. I apologize. Is that it really deals very well with aggro because you play all these cheap minions to execute your game plan, and then you just slam a broom down and just annihilate the aggro player's board.
Well,
So then,
it is aggro, right? I mean,
yeah, it is.
It is an aggro deck. It's a better pirate deck. It's pirates, I think, with rush and with bigger bodies at a hit to life and at a hit to card count is sort of what it feels like. That's where they're trading off at. It's super effective, you know.
I agree. I think that's an excellent remark. It is an aggro deck, and it wins in an aggro time frame. And
aggro, yeah.
It's the only thing that I will say in its defense is that at least it's over quick, kind of like Starliner at its peak.
Yeah. I think it reminds me of the Pirate Warrior. I think that the difference being it's cheating tall minions. It's not. It's the same board that drove me crazy with Pirate Warrior, but now you have the 8/8s which almost no decks at turn 4/5 can really deal with, and Lothab just shuts that all down.
Yeah,
it's here to stay. It's the best deck in the format. Those who are saying Reno Priest is better, maybe that was true, but things have evolved quite a bit in the last week. And I think it's something to keep an eye on. And I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do next month. I'm serious. I might just rock Token Druid for the first few days, and just suck up the L's against the priests because I can't stand it. I don't want to. I can't play the deck. I don't enjoy it, but I also don't like playing against it. So. We'll see. I think that this will be a topic to revisit in future episodes because I think that we don't know what the future holds, but I feel that it's going to become the deck of the format if it hasn't already.
Well,
I do think that you did have a solution to this meta, and that was purchasing
a different game.
I mean... Sure. Or play a different format. It seems like standard. I don't play much standard, but just seeing tweets, there seems to be quite a bit of diversity there, and a pretty good Ungoro-like meta with different things. So if that's true, then hey, I mean,
I've been watching some of the. Oh, sorry, Pete, go for it.
No, go ahead, Nate.
All I was going to say is that I've been watching some of the GM stuff lately, and mostly it was just to get the Twitch drops. But it was interesting, and then you see those folks saying delete priest. That's been the hot thing lately, and it's not nearly as oppressive as where we're at. I think they've got some pretty, I don't know, like a pretty varied meta. It sounds pretty good to me. Honestly, I hope that Dark Glare becomes a problem in standard because we'll get a nerf a lot more quickly. I mean, I don't know. I'm always shocked that they haven't seemed to realize, like, anytime we can get cheat out things for 0 mana, like, that's always a problem. I mean, we knew from the beginning that Flesh Giant was going to be good, and so I don't know. I think if nothing else, they should stop. Or maybe that's not even 100% of the problem. I mean, it's this mana reset. So.
One last comment, and I know that you do want to move on, so I apologize. This is kind of the biggest red flag for me. Why this deck is so busted. There are people cutting Tour Guide from the deck, saying Tour Guide's not good enough.
Wow.
And I mean, Martian
you can only tap once a turn.
Yeah, Martian Boo, who's sitting, I think he was ranked 6th the last time I saw him queue into Cream Puff. I mean, he's kind of one of the biggest proponents saying that Tour Guide is bait. I mean, if Tour Guide is truly bait, I mean, that's where we are with the deck. So, I mean, enough said there.
Pete, what did you want to add?
So I was just going to say, I think what Blizzard knows that we don't know, which I'm sure is a good health indicator, is how many instant concedes they're going to start seeing off Warlock. Right, and that's always something like in the back of my mind I consider when you see some of these decks that are so oppressive. Like what happened with Demon Hunter early on is like, not everybody likes playing. I mean, I'm going to say I don't like playing Dark Glare Warlock. I don't want to feel like I have to net deck that to climb. So I play something else, and if I'm just instant conceding, like that's the kind of thing I think they get that sort of data, and I think those are the times when they might also step into, like they can start seeing it's causing problems for the player base. Not just yelling about it on YouTube or on our podcast, but like they will start to see when people are just done playing against that kind of deck. And hopefully they can make some small changes.
They have been
I
much
wonder
better
if they
lately.
I wonder if they track stats where people stop playing. Like, I remember back in the day, like, I'd queue into 2 big priests in a row that took like 30 minutes, and then I'd not play the game for like 3 weeks. Like, I wonder if they track that as well. They must. They probably have robust analytics, I would assume. So,
I imagine they can as well. And I do know that Cora in particular mentioned, like, was it right before or right after Scholomance dropped, that they are, in fact, paying attention to Wild. So I have to imagine that they're seeing what we're seeing with Darkglare Warlock. And yes, of course, our shouting into the void, yelling at clouds is definitely a valuable voice in that conversation. I do think that when they're looking at those stats, if they are paying attention to Wild like they claim they are, and I believe that they are, that we'll see a nerf before too long.
Yeah, Sheep and I were joking here. Like, this is why we have not dusted our extra cards yet.
Yep, exactly.
That's funny.
I couldn't resist. I hit the disenchant button last week. I had some gold cards to craft, and I couldn't wait. So I'm out, guys. Sorry.
And
See,
who remembers the last
I don't
time
blame you.
saw a Void Caller? How crazy is that? In the
Right?
space of a few weeks?
It's too slow. You play
It's
Void
crazy,
Caller, it's
right?
turn
It
4, the
feels like
game's
engineer,
over.
like-
The game's done. I mean, Cube Block doesn't exist anymore
Which
because,
is
like,
crazy, because that was
It is
that's one of the longest running greatest decks, and it's amazing to me because every time I still mulligan sometimes for Q Block out of habit when I'm not really paying attention. Because how many years right? Like how many years of practice was that? And Darkglare comes down, and I'm like, nope, didn't think that one through.
In VM.
I saw someone pop off with it on turn 2. They played they played they kind of they pre-discounted the hero power and coined out the frickin' Darkglare and then just started cycling. It was like, oh my god, like just get me out of here.
Wow.
Anyways,
Bottom right.
Yeah.
get me out of here.
I haven't had the pleasure yet, but I think the last game I queued into, I was playing Odd Warrior against a Reno priest, and it was like, okay, we're gonna be here for a couple months, and I ended up winning by the skin of my teeth, and it was only because I had 30 health plus another 50 armor or something gross like that. And they still got me down to 7 health. It was insane.
Wow.
And that's with me milling their WinCon, the one that does an extra 4 damage, whatever it's called.
The Spawn of Shadows.
Yes. It's just absurd, some of the reach, but.
So
anyways.
those who are looking to beat Darkglare by not uninstalling or playing a different game and do not want to put themselves through the agony of playing Odd Warrior, Corbett's Token Druid, I think it's Hazer, or not Hazer, Slate, kind of tweeted out the list. I think Corbett might have also.
It's in our Discord. Yeah. Well,
Oh, is it? Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
That deck has been my only positive or consistent deck against Darkglare, but it's I don't know, of all the Token Druid builds, I like it the best. It cuts the pirate the cannons and adds in some different things, and I feel it plays quite well. I quite like it, so you might want to give that a shot if you're having the Darkglare blues.
Sounds good. All right, well, we've been on this enough. Let's I want to switch over into our deck of the week. Before I do that, real quick, I had been meaning to do this. We had a giveaway, and I wanted to announce the winners really quick. So there is that Felosophy Bundle that includes 20 packs and 2 guaranteed legends. We were going to give away one of those, and then our sponsor, Shokunin, offered a second one. So we've got 2 winners. I did this kind of in the background, but pulled the random winners here. And the folks that I've got are Zorb, HS, and Alekman14. So I will be reaching out to you guys to hook you up with your bundles. And if for whatever reason I have not heard from you, then I will be finding other people. But hopefully, you guys are around. So congratulations on the Philosophy Bundles. Thank you for subscribing to the YouTube and hanging out with us on the show. So that being said, let us jump over into our deck of the week. And Sneaky Pete has brought a couple of different Shudderwock decks, but I think the one that we're primarily going to be discussing is this Charge variant. So I'm going to put the deck list up on the screen here. It is a Reno build, and so these are all one-ofs. For the folks who are listening to the audio version of this, I'm going to go ahead and read through the card list real quick, and then we can chat about this. This is hardly my area of expertise, so I will pass the mic then over to Sneaky Pete. So here's the list, and again, these are one-ofs. Animated Broomstick, Burlock, Cult Neophyte, Devolve, Dirty Rat, Elementary Reaction, Murmuring Elemental, Sandstorm Elemental, Zephyrs the Great, Bog Slosher, Cold Light Oracle, Farsight, Lone Champion, Plague of Murlocs, Armored Warhorse, Hex, Lorekeeper Polkelt, Omega Defender, Sandbinder, Anti-Keelbot, Barista Lynchen, Big Ol' Whelp, Doppelgangster, Hagatha Scheme, Lotheb, Emperor Thorson, Leatherclad Hog Leader, Reno Jackson, The Curator, and Shudderwock. I like this list because there are cards in here that I have not seen in a long, long time, and that makes me happy. So can you tell us a little bit about this? How do you play it, and what is the kind of win con that you're looking for here?
Yeah, so, I don't even remember when I got started with Shudderwock. I was on the receiving end of Shudderwock for a long time in Standard, and, you'd get locked and just get really frustrated. But I think I started playing it a while, and I want to say in Standard, early Galakron, before the nerfs, I was still, doing a lot of Shudderwock stuff before the rotation. And so in the Wild, I started creating a version that, with the quest, that was very quest-centric. This goal of double the battle cry, double all your battle cries, get to Shudder, cause all this mayhem. And there was a while in the meta in Wild that it worked okay, and you'd have your Grumble turns, and you'd get your hand reassembled, and they'd added all this cool quest support, like the draw card, and then the 4/2 rush, so some really interesting pieces that with battle cries that functioned in some ways really well with the quest. But as I'm sure anybody that's played kind of at a higher level knows, you're not cheating mana for a long time into the game, and you don't have synergies until the end of the game. You have a lot of battle cries, but you don't have sort of some of the same tribe synergies a lot of times with these decks. And so one of the frictions is also Highland or not Highland, and in Wild especially, because this deck is something with the payoffs toward the end, the Reno healing turn became really important. And I actually had some versions for a while when the Pirates were so aggressive that I'd have a lot more taunts. So what this deck is trying to do is you're trying to assemble this complicated multi-part win system where somewhere around 9 or 10 or later in the game, you're able to drop Shudderwock and you're replaying all of your battle cries, but you're looking for some key battle cries. And so generally, most versions of Shudder are looking to lock the opponent out through Lotheb. I can't remember the guy that does 5/5. Battle card, cries cost 5 more. Maybe a ping with Life Drinker or a couple pings with Life Drinker. But you're looking to lock your opponent out and then get Shudderwock back in your hand. And then a lot of times the tool for that was Grumble, this really powerful 7/7. Everything goes back in your hand and costs 1, right? So really powerful card. But what would often happen to me is I would have these games and I'd be kind of within eyesight, just within spitting distance of winning, and something would go wrong with Grumble. Or my hand would get full because I had my old versions had a lot of cards that I was really strong at fighting the mid game because I was either doing a lackey version where I've got lackeys coming in and out with all these great, abilities, or some other cards that are bouncing everything back to my hand, or you've got Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. A lot of people why don't you run that? And it's well, honestly, even if the dragons are 1, I don't want anything back in my hand except Shudder. And it's amazing how quick that can get out of control over the course of a 30-card game sometime when you're just trying to stay alive and you're doing a lot of bounce. So really fun to play, but then your win condition gets really scrambled. So the other thing, and this is kind of what led me down this path, is then you'd have Grumble go, and I'd lose. I'd have built this enormous board through all these battle cries of all these 4/2 rush or other Shudderwocks. I'd have this board that all of a sudden would be 4, 5, 6 minion wide sometimes, and then almost all of them would die without room in my hand or go back in my hand. And I remember thinking, like, well, what if I could just fight with those? Like, what if I was gearing this a little differently? So when I went wide, I also either had rush or charge. And so I took a look then through kind of the neutral battle cries, like what can take me to charge? And then I had to say, well, what can make Shudderwock big and not cost tempo throughout the game? And that's another big friction with this deck, is like, how much tempo do you give up trying to assemble your win condition? But there's some really cool cards. There's an elemental that gives you +1 attack per card in your enemy's hand. There's the dragon that does it for your hand, but the one that I found to be most consistent and best at tempo is a Mega Defender, because you're really never dropping Shudderwock usually before turn 10 anyway, that says, hey, if you've got 10 mana, they get +10 attack. And that's a really interesting battle cry, because now all of a sudden, every Shudderwock turn, I've got a 16/6 on the board. And then the other component you're trying to assemble is charge, right? So you're going to get charge. I've got 2 ways built into this. One, I think, is sometimes not consistent enough. So I've got the leather clad, which says the opponent has 6 or more cards in hand. That's actually, for a lot of the games you play by that point in the game, that can be pretty consistent. But the other nice thing about that is that can be certain. Like, you can look at your opponent's hand and know going into it if you're going to hit charge. The other charge card that I have in there is your Armored Warhorse, which is looking for a condition of, do you have, if they 2 random cards out of the deck, which one's higher, right? Which one costs more? Is it yours or the opponent's? And it's a little deceptive, because if there's a tie, you don't get it. So depending on the deck you're playing, that one's a lot less consistent. But Armored Warhorse is a decent tempo card a lot of times if you get lucky on it, and it's got charge. Like, it's basically kind of like you're dropping down almost a fireball. So it's all of those things together, and then I'm still trying to get Shudder back in my hand, but I've taken Grumble out, and now I'm trying to do it either through the bounce of Barista, which I've hopefully already played, or one of the other bounce cards, and I'll vary between playing 2 or 3 bounce cards at that point, with the odds of getting it back in my hand. What's cool about this, though, and I know I sent you some screenshots to try to highlight this, is there's a lot of games where I get a 16/6 with charge, but there's also a lot of games where I get 3 16/6s with charge. And you do have to assemble a lot of pieces, but depending on how the game's going, Polkate makes that really reasonable. Now, I don't want anyone listening to this to get the sense that this is a new meta breaker. This is nothing like that. This Highland Shaman deck, Shaman in general, the current meta, like, it is not an easy thing together, but it's really a fun deck. Where it actually performs surprisingly well is against certain control decks. So especially Reno Priest, believe it or not, because the way I have this built, there's a lot of disruption. So you can grab a lot of combos and keys and pieces from the Priest. You can often make them overdraw, and then they don't often, if they haven't killed you, they really struggle with dealing with recurrent big charging Shudderwocks.
Yeah.
So couple hot takes. One, Shudderwock's my favorite card, so I applaud you, sir. 2, looking at this, how does this do against Darkglare? I mean, you've got seriously, because you've got the freeze. Freeze is good. Freeze is giant, stalls out a turn. You've got the Plague of Murlocs, which, obviously giving them a board of Murlocs sucks, but if they've got 4 giants or 3 giants, then...
Yeah, Murlocs are better now, and it's actually a card I'll probably drop. So in this last expanse, 2 expansions, they've created bigger Murlocs, they've created Rush Murlocs, Death Rattle Murlocs, and so it isn't quite the simple math it was in the past, because you are usually taking 2 to 3, often, or, like maybe a total of 4 stats away from each minion on average. That's not always enough. And the reason I had that in here for a long time is I was dealing so much with the Q-Block variants. This can be devastating against Q-Block or Res Priest or some of those other... This deck doesn't do great against Darkglare, because what it is missing... It does better not being a quest, which is something that'd be interesting to talk about, because the quest was a trap for me for a long time, and I saw my win rates go up a lot when I moved to a non-quest variant. I can talk about that in a bit if you guys care why, but you probably understand why. The version that does okay with Darkglare is if you go to a mid-gamier, spammier, lackier, value-generating version tied to a quest, you can have a really strong mid-game. You just give up the cleanliness at the end of, like, I routinely have really big shutters. They've often got charge. I'm fully healing, and Shudderwock's back in my hand. Like, that's a really fun win condition when you get together. And it doesn't feel as gross as some of the lock stuff, I guess, or seeing Spawn of Shadows fall out and getting pinged to death. Not doing great against Circle. And I think one of the missing pieces is just AoE. Like, the common one for a long time was Lightning Storm, but what's the problem with Lightning Storm? A, it's 2 to 3, but B, the overload the next turn is devastating with as fast as the meta is. Like, I see people run that in lists, and I always wondered, like, how are you handling in the early game basically having to skip your next turn when they're going to rebuild the board? If you draw Hagathas, and that's the other problem with Hagathas, but I mean, between that and Volcano, sometimes I run both, but often I go back to Hagathas. Like, if you draw that early, my feeling is your win condition against aggro goes up quite a bit. But if you don't, Darkler just gets too many stats too quick, and even if you can drop and do a full heal, you're not generating the board you need later. And I think one of the missing pieces generally of Shudderwock is when they nerfed the 2/3 taunt guy, the
Sorry, Night Chain Gang. Unnerf.
Yeah.
Okay, Ixar, you watch this because this is the best Wild podcast. Unnerf Saronite Chain Gang. You unnerfed frickin' Raza.
Right.
So unnerf Saronite and put Patches back in charge.
I like it. I like
in
it.
charge now.
Saronite is a strong tempo play, which Shaman doesn't have a lot of in those early stages. Like, on the right mana cost, tempo, really strong play. The problem is the most Shudderwock decks now, where you're trying to reshuffle Shudderwock, you're depending on Doppelgangster, which was probably a really strong class or a card, back when it came out. It's too slow. I mean, unless you're playing the right deck, it's a 6 mana or 5 mana 2/2/2. Like, most decks just laugh at that. And so it is often a deck that'll sit in my hand until the end, and now maybe I'm playing Shudderwock without that piece, and I'm not likely getting Shudderwock back in my hand. Saronite would change that if they bring that back. I think that would make a lot of Shudderwock decks a lot more viable.
Yeah, Doppelgangster feels so bad to drop. I mean, like, especially if you're not playing with any evolve effects, which you normally wouldn't be in a deck like this, because that's not your game plan. Saronite just stopped aggro. Doppelgangster it's just a necessary thing that you have to do that kind of kneecaps the archetype so much. So I completely agree. And I'd love to see Saronite get unnerfed. I mean, considering all of someone made a comment in chat, like, just re-nerf Raza, don't open Pandora's box. Man, we're living in a dark glare world, man. It's 2020. that box was opened a long time ago. I mean, in a world where Raza's too slow, what difference does it make?
That's funny.
Anyways,
Can we talk about the what I don't even, God, I feel bad saying this, but I'm not a huge Shaman player. What was the big change to Saronite Chain Gang? Was it that it makes a copy of itself at the end of the turn, or
Standard it enabled kind of these infinite Shudderwock combinations with some of the other pieces you had, because your battle cry is summon a copy of this minion, and so in Standard you'd play 2 versions of it, or you'd try to bounce it, and so you'd end up with 4, 5, 6 Shamans, and it was just too much for people to deal with. But they're actually, funny enough, like in Wild, across all the sets, there aren't a lot of duplicate cards that do that, and very few that do it well, but importantly, very few that do it. Like, it was a 2/3 taunt, but you got 2/2/3 taunts, so like, it's actually a pretty strong tempo play, even now, even in Wild. Like, it's a play I would love to make my turn 4s that I don't have available. And so they made a change to summon another Saronite specifically to kind of like indirectly nerf Shaman. Probably didn't have to refund a bunch of, that was the discussion at the time, right? That nerf was made so they didn't have to refund Shaman gold to everybody.
Additionally, they were actually also nerfing Rogue, because Keleseth was buffing it, and so now you can hand buff however much Saronite you want. This one the extra one that it poops out is still going to be a 2/3, so it can be a 4/5, right? The first one, but now the second half, rather than also being a 4/5, because instead of it being a copy of this minion, it's now a 2/3 Saronite Chain Gang with taunt.
I see.
Imagine Keleseth being a playable card.
Right?
That's just saying. Like, I mean, it's funny because it's the Embiggen effect, which is now, it's viable, but but in a very narrow construct. I'd like to see it be unnerfed. Shudderwock decks have always been my favorite, and like it wouldn't even be. I mean, at best, it would be a bottom tier 3 kind of deck. It just would slightly make you'd be playing with one less dead card, and I say one less dead card because a lot of the combo activators are not impactful upon playing them. And that's why I think this deck is really cool, because you do have a lot more impactful cards as opposed to going all in on the cycle strategy, and you don't have to pay as much attention to some of the pitfalls like the hand size. So I think that it's there's a lot of neat things going on with this.
I really like this deck too. The one kind of question that I had was the consistency, and I haven't played with it, so I'm not sure. The consistency of being able to get the Leatherclad Hog Leader to activate, or that effect rather, to activate with Shudderwock, since it requires your opponent to have so many cards in hand. I know that you do have the backup of the Armored Warhorse, which if you win that joust, then you also have charge. But that's kind of the one question that I had, was the consistency with which you do get your Shudderwocks to have charge.
So it's a good question. Later in the game, for most decks, a hand side of 6 is not that uncommon.
Cool.
Now, my version is doing something interesting too, which is that I am also usually forcing the opponent to draw 2, and I'm playing Lotheb, which the combination of that is often enough to mean if the Shudderwock doesn't get charged that turn, it's likely to have charge next turn, plus it's on the board and it's huge and they've got to try to deal with it. And then the Broomstick is also really helpful, because even if I don't have charge, Broomstick lets me come in and attack and clear the board, and ideally I've healed along the way. But it is a good question, and I think you're right. I think there are plenty of games where they have 4 or 5 in their hand, or even with this deck, I often find I'm rushing to assemble my win condition, which means that I am overdrawing, like the dragon that's in there that draws. I often don't want to play that if I don't have to, because once you start doing Shudder turn after turn and drawing, if you are at a different fatigue state than your opponent, that can start to bite you. So I have found Hogsteed actually be more consistent than the Armored Warhorse, and partially because you can tell if it's going to work before you play it.
Right.
And it's actually, it's funny, 6/6 with charge is not a bad tempo play a lot of times. It's there are better cards out there now, but like if the opponent's hand size is right, like it's a fireball that costs 2 more, and I don't mind that. But I think you're right. I mean, I think that's one of the small things that affect this deck. And the other charge neutral choice is if your hand is 0, the card gets charged as Battlecry. Well, that's, at least in how I've constructed this deck, I think that's basically impossible.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really good point, that Leatherclad Hog Leader on curve is pretty great. I mean, not the best, but it's a great tempo play and gets you towards your combo. So that's a great tempo play.
I really like the idea here of not clogging your hand, because I mean, I enjoy the Shudderwock decks, and I think that's what I've experienced in the past. That issue that you were talking about with Grumble is that there are so many things that consistently bounce stuff back to your hand or make extra copies, or cards that cost a lot, that I was constantly dealing with hand size issues and wanting to bounce Shudderwock, like copies of Shudderwock. Like, that's awesome, but when I've got 9 cards in hand, like, that's super risky. And you play a Grumble and then everything just dies. Like, I don't want that to happen.
Right, and that's what, I think it's funny. It took me a long time to say, but like Grumble was taking 20, 30 stats off the board for me.
Right.
Now it's a 1-cost Shudder. If I lined it up right and you lock it and everything else, like, yeah, you're carrying the game. But even sometimes, not always, because it could be that I'm playing Q block and they've got a bunch of huge taunts and they're threatening me again in a turn. I haven't actually locked them out effectively. Mm-hmm. And so that's what some of this was designed around. If I'm putting them on the board, what if I can fight with them? What if I can hit face, or if I can't hit face, what if I can at least smash their minions, force them to deal with it, while getting 1 back into my hand, ideally, for the next turn. And that's fun. And like I said, when it works right, it feels really good. And you're not doing it turn after turn, because you've got, 40. I don't know if you still got the picture I sent you. I could send that over again. But like
No,
you can end up
here,
with.
let me. I'll put it back up on the screen. Let's. There it is. Yeah, look at that. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
I did that one last night. Just to apologies. I didn't ask whoever I was playing for permission to show that, but I was just like, that was a game that went my way, and I was trying this out before we had this conversation, and like that worked out really well. But that's kind of the goal. That's why it's fun, and like Hunters had versions of this forever with King Crush or some of these other cheating. So it was just looking at it more in that vein, and I think you don't have. I feel like some of the weaknesses, some of those other ones where it's like you're tediously compiling this win condition and stalling. Like for the most part, what I like about this deck is you're kind of fighting turn by turn by turn. You're trying to find value. You can weave some of these things in, right? Emperor Therissian can be really important as your hand starts getting clogged, but it feels almost more like an arena deck with a fun win condition than it does a wild deck.
What did you hit Legend with this, or was it with something else?
No, I've never hit Legend. So I made it with this one, I made it to Diamond 5, and then because I think you and I were both, I looked at the Skullman's release, and I was like, I've got to get to Legend before this drops. Like, I was like, because I could just kind of get the sense that I was like, they just gave Quest Mage more tools, they've given some of these other decks more tools, like, so I ended up doing most of my climbing with Big Warrior. I also did some Q block with some twists. I had somebody kind of coach me on that, which was really fun. And so I did my climbing there, and then just kind of slummed it and got back to playing this. And then some Reno Priest and other things that were performing well. Because while meme decks are really fun, you can only lose so many games in a row before you
stop having fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what Sheep and I both did. What was it? Day 3, day 4. I think you Sheep had hit Legend with Discard Warlock on your lunch break, got home from work, then you and I did
Casually on the lunch break.
just casually.
But for real though.
And then you and I did co-op that night for, I don't know, a couple hours, and I hit with the same deck that you hit with, and it was great. But then...
Yeah, I remember watching you hit. Yeah, and it took me another night or two. I was like right before the expansion. I was like staying up later than I need to because I was like, I got to get this done. But this isn't the deck that I would have been able to climb all the way there with. Like, this is missing a few tools that I hope you get in, future expansions. Like, just even this expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Spell Burst. Awesome mechanic, right? Super fun. No synergy with Shudderwock decks generally because it's not a battle cry. So it's things like that. Like if you had some good strong, like I've been playing around, I'm like, man, what if you could get a good sort of spell damage battle cry Shudder? But the pieces aren't just there yet. But like it's real. Like I said, for me, Highland deck, a lot of cards, something like this. It's really fun to play because you're always sort of battling for board space for a long time until you finally get out the other end.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I mean, one of the detriments of this deck is like when I would lose a matchup, I'd often not hard tech. Like you'll see, like I don't think I have weapon removal here. I rely on Zephyr, and if there's a ton of weapon, I'd add it. But I would try to like put the card in that might make the difference in winning that matchup if it felt like it was like impossible. And so you end up with a deck that's decent at I think a lot of things, but that's bad in a meta that's refined because it. You need decks that have a really, really strong, clear win condition that's easy to execute, and this is just so many pieces to assemble. That's not always the case.
Yeah. Well, it certainly looks fun.
No Cobalt sticky fingers then, huh?
No, because it's like, but here's the problem with that with I think with Kingsbane is like, what the heck's it matter if I steal it turn 4 or 5? And it's Highlander, so those decisions I think have more repercussions sometimes because your odds of seeing a particular card go down. You're not running 2 of things. So if I don't steal that weapon till turn 4 or 5, is that going to win me the game? It feels
probably because they're going to insta concede. But in all seriousness, I was just being cheeky. I think that these tech cards are generally not an appropriate choice. Sometimes they are. I shouldn't always discount them, but you don't want to pollute your deck with like that card that will work one time out of 10.
Right. Whereas I think some of the other weapon cards, like they're still decent tempo cards. Mm-hmm. If it's 2 mana and and it's a battle cry and I'm going to replay it. But yeah, Sticky Fingers is something I've stayed away from. But partially also because as I've watched those games against Kingbane, even if I stole it, they usually had enough minions or enough damage that I wouldn't have been, I was still 4 or 5, 6 turns away maybe from feeling like I was going to be back in the driver's seat sometimes, because of how aggressive that deck is right now.
Well, and I like what you said about Zephyrus being that kind of slot, because what you're doing is you're increasing your deck's win condition rather than targeting one kind of like edge win condition that some of your opponents have. I think that's smart, specifically for something like this.
And the one thing I did sometimes tech a while back is, God, what's the guy? The 4/6 destroy all spells that cost 1 or more. Because for a while I was seeing a lot of the Druid.
Geist.
Because I was seeing a lot of the Druid Jade stuff. And, I could recognize it wasn't the best choice, but some of this game is fun. And I think one of the things mentally that feel good for me is I queue up for Druid and I'm like, well, at least I have an answer in my deck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like I'd enjoy the game more knowing that I was driving toward an answer in the deck. And
Geist punishes quest, or did punish quest mage. I'm not so sure how much it does anymore. I mean, it's not really in the meta like it was.
Funny. Yeah, I people think that, but the problem is, quest mage, the way it's constructed now, has got these 2 win conditions. Everyone focuses on the quest being activated and giants coming down, but because of Flamewalker, they have this other kind of crazy built-in anti-aggro win condition, which is they can get that card assembled and start spamming you. But by turn 6, what 1-cost spells am I destroying that they needed? Whereas Lotheb, and I actually felt like one of the reasons we got the new 3/2, and she's in here because on curve she's not bad, Cult Neophyte. My feeling was Cult Neophyte was a soft nerf to Quest Mage. That's why Blizzard was throwing that our way. That was just in my head, because cards like that, I feel like, buy you those extra turns, whereas I very few games I've played with Quest Mage I felt like Geist would have made a difference at that point, even on curve.
Yeah, I think for me personally, the difference between running like a Skulking Geist versus running the Cobalt Sticky Fingers is that there's like a multi-purpose use. I remember having the same conversation when, like this is years ago, when Secret Paladin was like the hot deck, and between that and kind of some Secret Mage, people were running this like secret hate cards where you destroy the secrets or you steal the secrets. But it's like, hey, when you're destroying a secret 1 game out of every 5, like, is it worth it? Like, don't put that card in your deck. But I think where you have a card like Zephyrs or like Cult Neophyte, where there's some multi-purpose use, I think it's better. At least you can say, hey, this is for multiple matchups instead of just one matchup. But anyhow,
I think you're right. And the thing that I think is so cool about this is, like, I needed different tech cards when I was a newer player, and some of it was just in terms of, again, how I approached the match and how I felt about that matchup. But like, if I came off a really bad victory or really bad loss, one of the things I think that's the coolest thing that I think about Hearthstone is when you can build a deck that can beat any deck. Like, that they give you the tools to beat any deck, even if it means maybe I don't beat any other deck. Like, I would like to be able to queue up against, Jade Druid and know that I can win that matchup with a really high rate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think makes it fun. But I think what you see, and this is like for me, like, I don't think I'm on the same level as you guys are, but I start to more quickly, hopefully, recognize what cards are traps or feel good cards as opposed to consistent win more cards. And I mean, the nice thing about Highlander is, there's a whole other discussion. Is like, should this be a Highlander deck? Highlander gets you Reno, which can be really important hearing. Highlander gets you Zephyrs, and you almost end up Highlander sometimes in a way, I think, with how many different pieces you're trying to assemble and what you're trying to make them do. That the times I've tried to say, hey, let's not make this a Highlander. Let's have double heal bot, double some other things. Like, I haven't felt like the win percentage was enough more to justify how much fun it is to play where you never know what card you're going to draw.
Yeah.
I love Highlander decks for exactly that reason.
I have a hope.
There's definitely some spicy cards in here that I think are pretty fun. Sorry, Blutrane, what were you saying?
Oh, they made a comment on the last AMA that gives me hope that they're going to unnerf a lot of the Descent of Dragon cards when they rotate to be wild exclusive, including all
Yes.
of the Galakron Shaman cards. I wonder if they do that maybe with a Sour Knight unnerf. You know, that might bring back an archetype that, you know, a Shudderwock style deck that may be able to be built differently.
Yeah.
Before they nerfed all the Galakron cards, Frobro was playing a lot of wild Galakron Shaman, having a lot of success with it. I mean, they nerfed it pretty quick and pretty hard,
Yeah.
but I think that will open up maybe some new opportunities to think about building Shudderwock Shaman differently, including the Galakron cards, and I think it would work in a Highlander capacity as well.
Well, and the nice thing there's like Serenite, you still probably want because bounce becomes important, but now you have 8/8 rushes in the Galakron build, which again, it's not crazy oppressive, and turn 10 a lot of decks can deal with that, but you know, that was what was I found really fun about the Galakron is you went through assembling all of that piece, but Shudderwock gave you an ability to pull those monsters back out. And that's fun. I mean, 8/8 with Rush is fun, and I think not oppressive and wild in a way that it is a lot of other places. So, you know, you're 100% right. I mean, the cool thing about Shudderwock is, right, it should be the most powerful card in the whole game. It says replay all battle cries you play. You know, like there's no card that says get all death rattles of all cards or replay all death rattles. I mean, and those I think do tend to be more powerful, but it should be the most powerful card, period. And I do know that it limits their design space, but what does it say about wild when it's
it's not even. I mean, you know, Priest has Reno Ra as a Hunter, has Rexar as an unlimited late game value generator. Warriors got the button that they get on turn 1. I mean, the Shudderwock represents that win condition that Shaman has for a late game play. That's their only option, and it's awesome. But I'd like to see it be more viable than it is, because, you know, right now the only real viable Shaman decks are ones that cheat out minions really quickly or close the game out really quickly. And you know, maybe I'm speaking with my inner wild card here, but I'd like to have a viable control Shaman with a late game finish. I really want to see that.
No,
be
I
competitively
think
viable.
you're 100% right. I think it'd be good for the meta, and that's what this was sort of built toward, is something that could disassemble control decks, fight the control battle, have this great win condition at the end. But the challenge, right, is surviving to get there, and I'm just not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure that Shaman has those tools right now. But, you know, we may get him in other expansions, and we'll get to have a call about how oppressive Shudderwock you can dream, right?
We can definitely dream. Yeah, I think the only thing that'll keep the unnerfs to the Shaman Galakron from kind of running away with it is the fact that all of the invokes are battle cries, right? So you're polluting your board with 2/1s on top of the 8/8s.
So that's true. You can do there's a lot of battle cries that do 1 damage to all minions. So depending on how you structure it,
there you
right.
go.
So you, especially because now you're probably going toward quest. You're going to mana cheat. You're going to try to double it, but now you can get a full board of 8/8s and get rid of those little guys probably. But the one nerf I really want to see, right, is that freeze spell go down to 1. Like, man, like that was such an awesome little tiny control ping, and at 2 mana, it's just not viable. Forgetting that spell.
Yeah.
Well, I always applaud any Shudderwock deck that I see. I'm definitely gonna give it a spin, especially since I feel like I've got nothing else to do this season, as I anxiously dread ladder to reset. So gives me something to try.
Yeah, I'd love to play against you guys. And it's really fun against Reno Priests, unless they hit every card on the button. Like
they always do.
I feel. No, this one I would say this is, once you get used to it, I would say I win 50-60% of the time, which feels really good knowing how good Reno Priest is. But once you drop Shudder, they're really on the way out. You're healing, but then it's the dirty rats and some of the other tools can keep them on kind of the back foot for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not really building a big board, which is what a lot of their spells are there to deal with. And so what Reno Priest often doesn't do, unless Dirty Rat goes wrong and pulls something huge out, which, you know, of course happens sometimes, is you're still safer to assemble your win condition against something like Reno Priest in those, you know, the turns 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's dangerous with this deck, if that makes sense. Because I can the charge minions with no problem, and they've got a deal. So the Warhorse can come down, the Hogseer can come down, the Doppelgangster can come down, and yeah, they can clean them all up, but it's okay that I'm not putting pressure on them there because it's all coming. Does that kind of make sense? Like, that's where I think that this has, you know, pretty good chance with Reno Priest, because I don't care that they're clearing those. What they're not doing is smacking me in the face.
Mm-hmm.
No, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I like it. It's a really interesting deck, and I think that I don't know. I'm just excited to try it. So for the folks listening, we have started doing something with this show where we will the deck that we discuss on the show will also do some co-op games afterwards. And so if you're listening to this and you want to see the deck in action, if you go over to our YouTube channel, you can watch us play the deck, see how it goes, learn kind of the ins and outs. It's a little bit easier, I think, for us to chat about the deck in terms of like mulligans or matchups when we're actually seeing them, as opposed to, I mean, we could talk about it hypothetically right now, but not, it's not quite as easy as when we're, I don't know, playing things live. So anyhow, I mean, this is really exciting though. I think this looks really fun, and I don't know, that's what we're looking for, right? When the meta gets stale, we want to play something that is fun and entertaining. So anyways, before we kind of wrap up the main part of the show, is there anything else that you want to say about this deck in terms of, you know, what you're looking to typically keep in the mulligan, or any sort of you know, card interactions here that would not be I guess, you know, seen on first hand combos or whatever?
Real briefly, right? For me, a lot of times the thought is, am I facing it, like, is it control, is it aggro, what am I going to deal with? So the meta helps a lot. Like, if I'm going to hang on to Hex or I'm going to hang on to Devolve, right? Those are decisions I'm usually making if I think that I need to transform something to avoid like a death rattle or something that's going to keep gaining value on me. And I don't, like, right now in the meta, those aren't necessarily cards that I necessarily super want. So a lot of times when I look at it, it's just, can I play it? Can I hit it? Can I get tempo? The card value here, like, it trends a little bit toward the lower side as I'm trying to get out on the board. You know, things that I see that I always keep, like Zephyrs, of course. I will keep Hagatha's Scheme, and then I'll often keep Polkheat. And then otherwise, if it's bigger than that, I'm throwing it back. I mean, most of the time, if it's bigger than, you know, one of those, like Polkheat, I'll keep just because of, I may not even play him on 4 necessarily, but he's such a powerful card. And I actually think has ticked the win condition up a bit, because if I drop him, if you look, and Curator, we can have a whole another time. Like, Curator is not an essential card. Curator was a way to try to tutor certain cards, lighten the deck, get good cards. It's got taunt, but not be putting myself in an overdraw, if that makes sense. Like, that's why you don't see some of the real aggressive draw cards here, is because that can bite you toward the end when you want to keep Shudder in your hand and not jump into fatigue like crazy. So I'm trying to keep the smaller cards. I'm trying to hope I can get to turn 3 or 4, and then start dropping things that the opponent kind of has to deal with. But the nice thing with this deck is I don't care. Clear it every turn. Like, I don't care. I'm building toward that win condition. But when you drop Polkheat, if you don't have Shudderwock already, maybe you hit Curator. You've usually drawn some of these, but usually I'm only a turn away from Reno, and Reno can be super powerful, as you guys can imagine, in this meta. Being able to drop him on curve 5, 6, 7 can really get you the legs you need sometimes. So yeah, that's it. It's mostly just, you know, can I play it soon? And so I'm usually tossing big things back.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, and so what is the ultimate win condition here? Because I know that we're not looking to play Shudderwock on curve, right? I mean, we want to have a handful of things played ahead of time.
Right. Yeah. Defensive shutter work means everything has gone really poorly. So the win condition you're trying to assemble is that you are trying to land a Shudderwock that hopefully has charge, that's hopefully big, but that also hopefully gets back to your hand, so you're locking. And so you're trying to do a lot of things, and that's not always a great place to be in this game, especially if you're under a lot of pressure. But the doppelgangster means you're going to have 3 Shudderwocks. The hog leader, right? Hog leader should mean a lot of times that he's got charge. If not, broomstick means that he's probably got rush. And then Lotheb and Cold Neophyte get really important. And the funny thing is the 2 of them are really important and made me feel less like I need to be trying to double this. Although some games you get lucky, bounce it back to your hand, play it again, and they're totally locked out. But those 2 take a lot of the 5 mana full clears off the board now. So because you're now increasing the cost of spells by 6, that actually moves Brawl and other things out of the way. So I'm trying to land them. I'm trying to fight for the board. I'm trying to limit my opponent's turn to deal with them. And I'm healing the whole way, and I'm making them draw. I'm drawing too, but I'm making them draw. And normally late game, that's pretty significant pressure. And if you've got most of this lined up by then and survive till then, you're not in a bad position normally. You know, even if it's a 16-6 charge Shudderwock, like that's a heck of a thing for an opponent to deal with when all their spells cost 5 more.
Yeah. That's exciting. I don't know. I can't wait to play this. So this looks super fun to me. I mean, honestly, I like the idea of, I mean, it's almost you say you call it like defensive Shudderwock, but it almost feels like a tempo deck to me where a lot of the stuff like you can play sort of on curve.
Right. You want to be able to hit you know, the problem, you just can't, you're cheating so much mana at the end, but only at the end. And that's why you see cards you don't see a lot of people play like Lone Champion, but Lone Champion against Pirate Warrior, it doesn't do as much against Dark Lord, but Pirate Warrior coming down to turn 2 or 3, Lone Champion can be a pretty strong card because it's you know, it's good stats. Now it's got Divine Shield, now it's got Taunt, they've got to deal with it. It has some symmetry coming back then to the Shudderwock when you drop it down. If that triggers before you you know, you summon something else, that makes it really hard for your opponent to deal with. You know, Zephyrs is good for clears. You've got Bogs. I mean, a lot of games, if they're not under pressure, I will often wait further than I need to for Zephyrs, or I'll drop it early to get what I want. I'll pop it back in my hand, or you know, try to move it back and forth. But the cards in the 4, 5, 6 mana slot, like Doppelgangster doesn't have tempo. The others are pretty good, and if you're lucky, the other thing that I would say as a tip is don't be greedy with Barista. You want the battle cry. If I can get 1 or 2 decent things back in my hand, that's great. She's awesome turn 10, or I mean 10 mana turns, because I can drop her in Lotheb or her in another 5 cost. But if I'm just even putting 1 or 2 or 3 of these things back in my hand with her, I'm really happy because I'm doubling those battle cries, and that but it starts to be a lot of value. So that's, I don't like to drop her alone if I don't have to, but I think some people can be really greedy with her. And if you're getting 1 card back off her, that's pretty good value.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's really tempting sometimes to like want to be greedy, especially in this type of deck. But I like hearing your kind of response to that. It's like, don't be too greedy.
Yeah, Nate, don't be too greedy.
But greed is good.
The one play I make a lot, I'll say with this deck, the one that comes up a lot is the thing I double the most, I should say, with my Murmuring Elemental is actually the Cold Light Oracle. And that's going to sound pretty counterintuitive, but it's so common that that you'll have both in your hand for some reason, but also that you'll be playing a control deck that has like 8, 9, 10 cards and you won't. So like sometimes a really good play for me is Coin, Murmuring Elemental, and Cold Light Oracles. And I've dumped 3 cards from my hand to draw 4, but they were at 8 or 9. And so, you know, you're in a position now where 10, 15% of the time, maybe you're burning one of their win conditions. It's not, maybe 20. It's not higher than that. Like I know people get really excited, and you're frustrating them because now they got to dump their hand because they think it's going to happen again. And so that's one of the key plays that I really often like when that comes around. And now I'm filling my hand up. And like one of the reasons I switched to this from Quest is, for me, it seemed like win rate, that one, I was often seeing the card I wanted to see without Quest, whereas Quest was filling one of the cards in my hand. And I know I've seen a lot of people write and talk about that, because it seems like this is the kind of thing where doubling the battle cry should be really powerful. But the way this deck is structured, there are not actually that many times that I have the mana or interest in doubling the battle cry. I'd rather drop 2 cards to build toward my win condition, if that makes sense. I know it probably sounds weird, because I spent a lot of time playing this as a Quest deck, but I've been happier now with the cards I have with it not being Quest.
Yeah.
And like I said, the other huge difference thing for a lot of people is I don't have Grumble in this, because I've just built this massive board through battle cries. You know, the thought was, why are those all going back in my hand? Even though they're cheap, why am I taking
going face?
Right. Well, and for the folks that are watching or listening, you did provide me with your Quest version, and so I'll throw that in the show notes if anyone wants to try it. It's a different style for sure, and we don't need to really talk about it here, but a different style of play if anybody's interested, for sure.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, it's a really fun value mid game. The Quest thing with the lackeys, like you just go. Just very better players may pull this off. Very hard to assemble the win condition you often need against true control decks at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, very cool. All right. One other question for you. I guess, why is Emperor Thorison in here, and when do you drop him typically? Is it just to reduce the cost of all the stuff in your hand?
Yeah, great question. So he's there because as much as I've tried to tend this toward a low curve, you've got a lot of 5-6-ish cost minions. And that's slow, because now you're playing, often one of those a turn. And this is a deck that, Reno, Priest, or some of the other control type decks, you still are kind of racing. Like, you're still trying to get to that locked out tempo position where you now can sort of make them react to you, and you're putting a lethal threat on the board every turn. And so he is really good at that, and he's a must kill. He almost is like a quasi taunt card, I think, for a lot of purposes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so because of that, just that 1 mana reduction often makes it work pretty well. The only thing that you need to watch now, right, is Lucia, that you are not setting up a really good turn for Priest. So if you're playing a Priest, that's the only thing I'd say to pay attention to. And I think that's just sort of just a general tip that works well for anybody. Is too many reductions leaves them a really, really good hand to grab. But that's why he's there, is just, that's often a turn, hopefully 6 move if you've got it, if you're not being super pressured, or if you want him to deal with it. And now you can start getting the rest of your hand kind of cleared out, battle cries triggered, moving towards your win condition.
And if you're in a position where you can afford to be this greedy, then Murmuring Elemental and or Shudderwock, if one of those takes a tick, then you can double all of the battle cries from your Shudderwock, which
100%, absolutely. And you also, like, if you use that same logic and reduction, you can also be positioned to put Shudderwock like manually back in your hand from another card if you've reduced it. Like, you can use one of those return to hand cards if you've dropped him and reduced it. But just in my playing and at least play style, that stuff hasn't come up as often as I sort of expected it to. So what it really is now I'm getting a 6 cost and 5 cost out on the same turn, or I'm emptying this, what it sometimes feels like a very thick hand, because maybe I've Zephyred and I'm holding something interesting and big, or I drop Barista, got some great value back, but it's thick value, and I can't, it's only, you can't get rid of 5 cost minions that quick in this game, as you guys know.
Yeah. All right.
Every single doppelgangster costing 5.
Yeah, it's just watch your opponent laugh when that comes down and their whole board's full.
Well, this is super cool. I'm looking forward to playing it. I think we've been at this for a little over 2 hours now. We're at about 2:15, so I think it's probably a good time for us to sort of start winding down the show. And then if anybody else is interested in staying and watching, or checking out the YouTube co-op later, we will play a few rounds of this and kind of talk through some of the plays so you can see it in action. So unless anybody has any final words, I think I will kind of move us into the sign off. You guys have any parting shots, or we good to go?
We're good.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, Nate. Great show.
Yeah, absolutely. I was super excited to have you on. I really appreciate it. So Sneaky Pete, I know you're not real big on social media. Welcome to our Discord. It's been fun to have you. Are you? If people are looking to find you, is there a way that you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only place I'm at is I'm on BattleNet, and I think it's Sneaky Pete 77. I think that's right. So Sneaky, and then PETE 77. I think that's right. So always happy. I don't know. It's really fun talking to other wild players about kind of what they're doing or how they're tweaking things and stuff like that. So, and I'm on some of the Reddits every once in a while. So
you have to be very brave to visit the the Hearthstone subreddits for sure. You never know what you're going to get yourself into there for sure.
I have learned if you say anything about Quest Mage, you just get firebombed to death. So as long as you say
Anything
another
positive, negative, or
anything negative about
anything negative. They like their Quest Mage on Reddit.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a weird place.
Right.
I mean, you think it would be the opposite. Anyways, doesn't matter. I wonder what would happen if you say anything about Dark Glare in 3 weeks' time on Reddit.
That's
I guess we'll
Only
see.
one way to find out.
Right. We'll have to do a little social experiment here.
Prefer not to know.
That's funny. Well, Sneaky Pete, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate having you on. Blutrane, for those people who are looking for you, where can they find you?
Twitter's probably the best place. That's where I'm most active these days. BLUTRANE. And if I ever do decide to do a rare stream, I'll announce it there. I just want to also use this opportunity to plug my friend 3E_Anura once more, who's really trying hard to get his stream off the ground. Double top 100 legend this month, playing Odd Shaman. Super cool guy, really worth checking out his stuff. Great content. So yeah.
And I will definitely second that. We had him on the show a while back. He's a super nice guy. He's an incredible player and has taken essentially like an unheard of deck and now is top 100 legend on multiple servers. Like, it's just incredible. And super nice guy, and he's making also really quality YouTube content. So have to second you there. Electric Sheep City, where can folks find you?
Of course, you can always find me on twitch.tv/Electric Sheep City or on Twitter @eSheepCity. They don't let me have enough characters for Electric Sheep City over there. So, alas,
A crime.
Shame. Folks, if you're looking to find me, I'm most active on Twitter. It's @NateWolfTCG, NateWolfeTCG. As far as the show, you can find everything Born to Be Wild at borntobewildhs.com. We've got a very active Discord community, which has been a lot of fun. So there are links to that from the website. We are on Twitter. You can email us. All of our content goes on YouTube. So the video version of the show will be up on YouTube. The co-op portion will be up on YouTube, and other little tidbits throughout the week. I know Mike has been producing Tavern Brawl videos. And we've been doing some other stuff. We put the parody songs up there and some other things. But primarily, borntobewildhs.com is where you can find all of the fun stuff that we make each week. And then, let me see here.
while you look that up, I would like to thank you for hosting this show, Nate. You do a fantastic job and are quite laudable at that. So thank you very much for putting this together.
Oh, yeah, thank you. We like to wrap up the show with a little tiny piece of unrelated advice. Now, it is 9:30 p.m. Pacific time, but it is now 12:30 in the morning Eastern. That being said, I have not had dinner yet, and I'm looking for a midnight snack. So I am curious what you all like for your midnight snack. I'll start out with you, Blutrane. What is a good midnight snack that you recommend?
Potato chips, plain. I like Ruffles. I don't know if you have those in the States. I eat too many potato chips. I like the ones with less salt. Not because I'm trying to be health conscious. They're potato chips, but I find them more enjoyable.
Ruffles have ridges.
It's true.
For your pleasure.
Hey, this is Born to Be Wild HS, not Born to Be Wild.
This is
You guys started it. I just finished it.
It's Born to Be Wild After Dark. Wow. Okay.
It's 12:30 in the morning.
Oh, Sheep, how about you?
I live in Texas, so it will come as no surprise that I say Bluebell ice cream is my go-to.
Oh, very good. Very, very good. All right. I like that. Sneaky Pete, what about you?
It would definitely be barbecue potato chips, kettle cooked barbecue potato chips.
Now we're talking. Wiser words were never spoken, and you heard that on Born to Be Wild.